Also contributed to a 35% rise in the average price of a dozen eggs. Andrew Meredith is editor of Britain's Farmers Weekly.
The overriding factor from the farmer's perspective is just a simple failure since the spring to heed the warnings of the industry and pass on some of those increased costs of production to the consumer. We've seen prices go up on the shelves, but the money just hasn't filtered back to the farmers and the farm gate price. Unfortunately, producers are losing about 10 pence a dozen on average now.
Some supermarkets are preventing customers from buying more than 2 boxes of eggs at a time, and retailers are trying to seek alternative sources of supply in Italy and other parts of Europe. But egg farmers say the situation is expected to worsen, with the National Farmers Union arguing the difficulties are the most serious situation for food production in the UK since the end of the Second World War. The main news again, US Attorney General Merrick Garland is appointing a special prosecutor to head up 2 criminal probes into former President Donald Trump. Hundreds of Twitter employees have reportedly resigned rather than commit to new so-called hardcore working conditions imposed by Elon Musk. And Swedish investigators say they have found traces of explosives at the site of undersea blasts that hit the Nord Stream 1 and 2 pipelines in September. And that is the latest feature story news. Simon Marks reporting.
The FBI has successfully executed a...
This is the Onion News Network.
Free Talk Live.
It is Free Talk Live. Welcome to the show. The phones are open, and you can join us. The number is 603-283-6160. That's 603-283-6160. Tonight, joining you, it's Ian.
And Chris.
And from an undisclosed location, it's nobody.
Indeed. Good to have you guys here. As always, there's plenty in the news to discuss here tonight. Chris, you've got a story coming up. We're going to look at the various different crackdowns on freedom that are happening over in the EU. And why does that matter? Well, it's because a lot of these governments, we're not located in that location, that we're not in that part of the world, but a lot of governments, they do monkey see, monkey do. So when one government does one thing, other governments are watching to see what the reaction is and whether they get away with it, if it's challenged. And then they do the same thing.
Oh, yeah.
Down the line.
And we may not be there, but the U.S. government certainly is. So,
you mean as far as in the European Union?
Yeah.
Yeah, they're very interested in what's going on over there. In fact, I've got some news about them as well. There's also a crackdown on Z Library. I have never heard of the Z Library until recently, but apparently somebody put up a library free of all kinds of like ebooks. Whether or not they were legal is another question, and the federal government has decided they're going to crack down.
Yeah, there's a few of them out there. I think that is it's like the Library of Alexandria. It's got every ebook that is known to exist.
That's what it seems like. So they're coming down hard on those folks. Also, the Twitter situation continues to develop in a somewhat entertaining fashion. The most recent development there is, you guys may have heard that when Elon Musk took over Twitter, basically after, I don't know if it was the first week or the first few days, he just axed 50% of the staff. So they knocked out a good half of the staff.
Wait, was it that high?
Yeah, I believe it was. And then...
Oh, that's not the half of it. Well, it was the half of it.
Right. And then this week, they cut even more out, according to, let's see here, Yahoo News. Elon Musk... Now the mainstream media... Go ahead.
He didn't actually fire them.
Correct.
He basically put out a memo that said, look, if you're going to stay here, you need to commit to showing up to work, doing your job, and being hardcore about it.
Right.
And apparently the responses from that were enough to at least frighten people who didn't know what was going on outside the company, although Twitter is still operating fine.
Yeah, there's been a lot of press about this in the last 24 hours or so. The mainstream media has been acting as though Twitter is going to go down, that it's over, they're going to lose all their staff, and they're not going to be able to keep the site online because of the mass, not layoffs per se, but essentially they're basically terminating their own positions by choosing not to agree to essentially what Elon Musk is saying here. He basically gave them an ultimatum, said they had 36 hours to decide whether or not to continue with Twitter. They had to check a yes box on a Google form in order to continue working for Twitter. And they basically had to agree, as nobody had said there, to what he called a quote-unquote extremely hardcore, unquote, Twitter 2.0, or leave the company, and said they were to expect long hours at high intensity. And it seems as though a large number of employees have rejected Musk's vision. The New York Times reported the number was in the hundreds, while other early reports suggest the number could be much higher. So basically people are saying that he fired 50%, and then he managed to tweak another quarter of the original staff, the original numbers, so basically another half of what was left, into no longer continuing to work on their own voluntary basis. So that's the situation there.
Well, if we can keep spreading that message, I'm liking this message. You know, I mean, Twitter. Yeah, guys, Twitter's dead. Move on. Check out Mastodon. This is a good thing. That's more decentralized, and I'm not necessarily on the left here saying that, even though the left's been saying that. But it's kind of funny, the right saying something that kind of sounds good. You know, we're gonna destroy the company, and then the left is propagating it, and well, it seems like it's best for everybody, because now we're no longer controlled by any side.
Yeah, although I believe that, again, reports of Twitter's demise have been greatly exaggerated.
Absolutely.
Elon Musk is not the fool that the leftists would make him out to be, and I suspect that he had very specific reasons for doing this.
Absolutely.
He also has a bevy of software engineers, and keep in mind that, you know, most of the big tech companies have a few hundred developers. Twitter, for some reason, had 3,000 of them.
Doing what?
I can't imagine what they were doing. Drinking wine and eating lunch for free, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I could understand if they were like...
explains why they were never profitable.
Yeah, weren't they costing... I think he was saying... he said early on when he took over the company that it was bleeding $4 million a day.
Oh, now I know why.
I believe it.
Yeah.
And I mean, I've looked at the site. Unless there are huge treasure troves of features that I've never found, I have no idea what 3,000 people were doing working on that project.
There were not 3,000. There could not have been 3,000 developers working on Twitter. That just seems absolutely
working.
insane.
That's the thing. They get hired, and then they, as nobody pointed out, they sit around, or they don't even come to work, and they collect a paycheck.
I mean, look, I would say I could like see that if it was like, I don't know, they were developing an operating system and maybe other products and things like I could maybe see that, but 3,000 on Twitter?
Yeah.
That's just unbelievable.
Okay, right now I'm looking at a state called Statista, and it shows that December 2021, Twitter's total employees were 7,500.
Wow.
December 2020, it was only 5,500. A year before that, it was 4,900. So a lot of these people were hired within the last year. 2,000 of them.
That's crazy.
Now, that's not software developers. That's total employees.
Right. Well, I'd expect there to be a lot more employees than software developers, but still, for Twitter?
Yeah, I mean, apparently there was a lot of middle management also.
Yeah, like 6 middle managers for every one developer, probably.
Well, that wouldn't be borne out by 3,500 software developers and 7,500 total employees.
That's true.
But yet there there were a lot more middle managers than were needed, from everything I understand. I've been watching. I've been finding this very, very interesting.
It's been entertaining for sure.
Yeah.
And this guy is absolutely, a very sharp businessman. Whether or not you agree with his viewpoints, and for instance, he did make a decision today to apparently reinstate the Babylon Bee account, which, of course, the big competitor to The Onion in satirical, quote-unquote, news. They're a pretty entertaining group, and in fact, I would argue they've gotten better than The Onion in recent years. The Onion got too politicized.
I like a lot of their stuff. They get where The Onion got politicized, and Babylon Bee is also political, but about half the time their politics align with mine, so it's funny anyway. But then they get off onto a bunch of religious stuff sometimes.
Yeah,
it just makes me go, that leaves me cold.
Well, it is called the Babylon Bee, and so it does kind of have a religious overtone to it.
It is explicitly a Christian site, so they're not advertising falsely.
Yeah, you know what you're getting into that. So they restored his account, or their account today. They restored Jordan Peterson and also Kathy Griffin, who was the leftist comedian who was banned recently for impersonating Elon Musk on the site. And he decided to bring all of them back. And then when somebody asked, because whenever Elon Musk posts, he's got 100 million followers. So whenever he posts, there's thousands of comments, right? He responded to one person who said, "What about Alex Jones?" Ooh. And he said no. So this, despite moments before that having talked about how Twitter is all about freedom of speech. Hold that thought, nobody.
He may be concerned about liability.
We'll continue here in moments, and well, again, he's saying it's free speech, but then he says he's not going to bring Alex Jones back. More coming up here. It's Free Talk Live.
Did you or someone you love work, live, or serve at Camp Lejeune between 1953 and 1988? If you or someone you know lived, served, or worked at Camp Lejeune between 1953 and 1988 and has cancer, Parkinson's disease, or another serious health issue, they are entitled to compensation. To see if they are eligible, they need to call Liberty Legal. Contaminants in the drinking water have led to these serious diseases, and legislation is now available for veterans and family members who may qualify for financial help from the government. There may be a time deadline, so don't wait. Call 888-918-1037. Anyone that has lived, worked, or served at Camp Lejeune from 1953 to 1988 and has had cancer, Parkinson's disease, or another serious health issue, the money is already set aside. 888-918-1037. 888-918-1037.
Are you tired of governments murdering people around the world? Stop using their money. There is an alternative. Bitcoin is a stateless free market non-political currency. Bitcoin cannot be inflated or controlled by any government. By using their money, you are helping the state. Stop doing it. You have an incredible alternative available now. Learn it, use it, spread it. Get started with Bitcoin at bitcoin.com. That's bitcoin.com.
If you want to know the latest about Free Talk Live before we go on the air, all you need to decide is how you want it delivered. It's your choice. Visit news.freetalklive.com to receive our usually weekly news updates by email. Plus, we have a Twitter account at twitter.freetalklive.com, and you can follow us on the decentralized Mastodon platform at toot.freetalklive.com. So please follow us at toot.freetalklive.com and sign up for our emails at news.freetalklive.com.
We have some good news. The indictments against Ross Ulbricht in the District of Maryland were dismissed with prejudice, meaning they can never be refiled. This is especially good because those indictments contain the only charge ever made that Ross engaged in murder for hire. This was a serious allegation that Ross Ulbricht denies. It was never prosecuted or ruled on by a jury, but was trumpeted by the federal government and the media as if it were proven fact. The Maryland court held these indictments for almost 5 years, poisoning Ross's case and leaving him under a cloud of unproven allegations. allegations. As explained in Ross's appeal to the Supreme Court, the fact that the judge used these allegations to give Ross a draconian sentence of double life without parole violated his Sixth Amendment right to a jury trial. Judges are required to issue sentences based on convictions decided by a jury, not unproven allegations never even charged at trial. Although this is a positive development, the dropped indictment will not set Ross free. Now, a presidential pardon is Ross's only hope of freedom. Sign the petition at freeross.org. freeross.org.
What if you want to hear the latest episode of Free Talk Live, but all you have is your phone, you forgot to download our archive, and you have no data connection? You can call our Listen line at 641-793-0191. That's a long-distance number, so you may incur charges. If not, listen as long as you want. 641-793-0191. The Free Talk Live Listen line, 641-793-0191.
Have you had enough of the big-name web hosting services that are long on promises but short on bleeding-edge features, uptime, and customer service? Try Agorist Hosting, the agile web host that offers full concierge service from website redesign, full e-commerce solutions, custom apps for your Shopify store, IPFS integration, and more. Agorist Hosting is ready to take your web presence into the future. To get started, head over to agoristhosting.com.
We're still not sure why you'd want to watch, but our video feed is streaming nightly for free at cam.freetalklive.com.
It is Free Talk Live. You can join the show here, bring up whatever you want. The number is 603-283-6160. That's 603-283-6160. Ian, Chris, nobody joining you in this the show tonight. Of course, the phones are open and you can bring up absolutely anything you want. We're going to get into the EU cracking down perhaps on privacy coins. That's on the way. Plus, Mastodon. Is it going to survive the upcoming Digital So-Called Services Act? Chris has that story. We're going to get into that shortly here, and we'll find out what that's all about and what that means for the future of freedom on the internet, what remains of it. But we were starting out by talking about some of the latest drama in the Twitter universe with Elon Musk's takeover, just 2-3 weeks old or something like that at this point. It hasn't been going on for too long. He's already chopped half of the staff out of Twitter, and now hundreds more at least, maybe more than that, maybe more than 1,000. The numbers I don't think have been finalized yet, have decided to no longer continue working there because they don't want to actually work, basically, is what it comes down to. Elon Musk had given them a deadline on Wednesday. They had until like 5 o'clock the following day to decide whether or not they wanted to stay with the company in what he described as a extremely hardcore mode of working. He's not going to stand for people not coming into work, which is sort of the standard mode of operations for Twitter previously, was if you just didn't feel, hey, you don't feel like coming in? It's no problem. You don't have to. Now you got to come into work. Now you've got to do things to actually get paid. And so the kind of employees that don't want to actually work, they decided they weren't going to continue. So we don't know how many employees remain at Twitter, but the mainstream media has been trying to make it sound like that this is the end. That last night they were wondering whether Twitter was going to survive the night because they lost so much of their critical operations staff. And I don't know about you, nobody, but I have seen no downtime. There have been claims that there's been a lot of outages with Twitter. Have you seen anything about that?
I've seen nothing. It's worked perfectly for me every time I've pulled it up today. I've also seen I've seen lots of people vaguely saying Twitter is falling apart, but I've seen nobody say, "Oh, I lost Twitter for an hour today," or anything like that. There's never anything specific. It's just this vague nonsense.
It does beg the question of how long it would actually take to go down, after, like, say, firing all the employees, right? Like, how long could it keep going?
Well, I mean, until BitRot sets in, I would imagine, which...
What is BitRot?
BitRot is what they call it when software is unmaintained and slowly stops working. That's what Cell 411 was suffering from. And the way that happens is things like the APIs that are used by the app will change, and the app will not be updated to work with the new APIs, so all of a sudden things will stop working.
Right, so the rest of the internet is moving onward, and you're just in a status.
Yeah, you know what?
Stasis.
A good example of this might be something like, let's say the web browsers start discontinuing support for sites that are not using SSL certificates, right? Well,
which they have been doing.
Right. So, if Twitter doesn't have SSL, where it's not on by default or something, right? And your browser all of a sudden doesn't allow you to access sites that don't have SSL certificates, well, you go to Twitter and it won't work anymore. So,
gotcha. But yeah, everything's been working fine with Twitter, even though there's a hashtag RIP Twitter that has been trending as users were hoping, I think, that Musk couldn't hold things together. But the fact is, there's plenty of people. As you said, Nobody, he has a lot of engineers in his back pocket. He's got people that work over at Tesla, which is not just a hardware company, but a software company, right? Like they are computer cars at their core. They're operating, on software, driving on software. Whether you think that's a good idea or not, that's what they're doing. And I saw another thread where people were just basically volunteering, like, "Hey, look, man, we got your back. We'll come work for you," essentially. So there's plenty of people who are interested in doing work on this particular platform. It seems like all the media coverage is way overblown. And there were angry employees outside of their San Francisco location, apparently with like a projector, and they were projecting insults on the Twitter headquarters against Elon Musk.
No, it wasn't a projector. What it was is the Twitter headquarters. I've seen video of this. They've got a ticker tape. A lighted ticker tape outside that's part of the that is part of the building, and somebody on their way out the door apparently changed the text on that ticker tape.
Oh wow!
So it was the building itself that was projecting this stuff.
Oh, I didn't realize that. When I saw the footage, it looked like somebody was shooting something from the across the street. But whatever. Either way, it's pretty ridiculous, some of the behavior that is been happening from the now former employees with Twitter.
I think Elon did make his first mistake today, though.
How's that?
Well, he announced a new policy saying that basically positive tweets would be given more reach than negative tweets, which would be de-reached. I can't remember.
Yeah, I've got the actual tweet here. Here's what he said. Here's what he said. New Twitter policy is freedom of speech, but not freedom of reach. Negative/hate tweets will be max de-boosted and demonetized, so no ads or other revenue to Twitter. You won't find the tweet unless you specifically seek it out, which is no different from the rest of the internet. He said, note, this applies just to the individual tweet, not the whole account. But then within minutes, he had said he was no longer going to be, he was not going to be undoing the ban on Alex Jones. And he further addressed that the Trump decision has yet to be made. So as of right now, Donald Trump's account is still in the suspended status on Twitter.
Yeah. And I think in both cases that may be related to legal issues. The first thing being that, say, Alex Jones went on there and started trash talking the people who are suing him. Elon could be considered liable for that if he intentionally let them back on. And the same thing if
he never kicked them off in the first place, so that was the prior owner.
That's true. But if he created that, if he returned him, he might be liable for his actions. And
no, I'm going to disagree.
Trump
I think it's
trying to raise the revolution.
No, if they have a policy, if he institutes a policy that's not specific to any user, that won't be a legal issue. I'm pretty sure.
Well, I'll tell you this: I know that our syndicate Genesis Communications Network. They were sued originally in the whole Alex Jones lawsuit over the things he said on the air, and they ended up dropping them. The plaintiffs dropped GCN from the suit. There's more coming up.
A congressman recently revealed that legislation totaling 2,900 pages and involving more than $1 trillion was available to members of Congress for less than 48 hours to study and consider. That's over 60 pages of legislation per hour. Do you think anyone read the entire bill? I'm Jim Babka with DownsizeDC.org. Consider a proposal buried in a 3,200-page, $388 billion bill, which would have empowered committee chairmen or their agents to examine Americans' tax returns. When this horrible provision came to light, no one claimed to know how it got into the bill. One congressman questioned said, "I didn't write it, I didn't approve it, I wasn't even consulted." If your attorney represented you this way, he might be disbarred. But this is how Congress represents you every day. That's why DownsizeDC.org has created the Read the Bills Act. You can force Congress to read their bills before they pass them at DownsizeDC.org.
From Feature Story News in Washington, I'm Simon Marks. U.S. Attorney General Merrick Garland has appointed a special prosecutor to head up 2 criminal probes into former President Donald Trump. Jack Smith, a former war crimes prosecutor, will now lead the investigations into whether Donald Trump or members of his inner circle broke the law ahead of the January 6th riots last year on Capitol Hill, or with regard to the former president's handling of classified documents recovered from his Mar-a-Lago estate. The news was announced by the Attorney General.
Based on recent developments, including the former president's announcement that he is a candidate for president in the next election, and the sitting president's stated intention to be a candidate as well, I have concluded that it is in the public interest to appoint a special counsel. Mr. Smith will begin his work as special counsel immediately.
Reacting, former President Trump said the move again revealed the politicization of the Department of Justice and indicated that he will not cooperate with Mr. Smith. In other news, as many as 1,200 remaining employees of Twitter have reportedly resigned rather than commit to new so-called hardcore working conditions imposed by owner Elon Musk. With more from FSN's bureau in Silicon Valley, Ira Spitzer.
The social media platform had about 2,900 employees before a deadline on Thursday to either commit to Musk's demands to work long hours and be hardcore or leave with 3-month severance. The situation prompted fears that the site would cease to function properly without people to run it. Musk immediately laid off half of Twitter's staff earlier this month after purchasing the company for $44 billion and taking it private.
Swedish investigators say they have found traces of explosives at the site of undersea blasts which hit the Nord Stream 1 and 2 pipelines in September. FSN's Giles Gibson reports from the Estonian capital, Tallinn.
Well, we've heard from Dmitry Peskov, who is the spokesperson for the Russian President Vladimir Putin, saying that they want to see a full assessment of the damage before there's any sort of discussion about repairs in the future. Also saying the Kremlin that it's going to be very important to establish who was responsible. Now, the Russian government has previously actually pointed the finger at the British Royal Navy, accusing them of being involved. The British government categorically denied that.
The publisher of the Washington Post newspaper is slamming the Biden administration after the State Department said Saudi Arabia's Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman is covered by immunity and cannot face a lawsuit over the killing of Saudi-American journalist Jamal Khashoggi. In a statement, Fred Ryan said the US government is granting a license to kill to the Crown Prince. From bureaus worldwide, this is FSN.
You can help spread the ideas of liberty with our Patreon for just $5 per month at amps.freetalklive.com.
It is Free Talk Live, and you can join the show by dialing in here at 603-283-6160. Since we're talking about social media, we want to invite you over to our social media server. It is running what is called Mastodon. It's an open source, free alternative to Twitter. It basically does what Twitter does. You can post a thing, and by the way, we changed our limits. We can act, because we run the server, we can set the number of characters that you're limited to. So Twitter's like 280, ours is 1776. So you get plenty.
That's up from 500?
Yeah. Now it depends on what client you use. So some clients don't take note of the character limit being different. So if you're using one of those clients, it might still show 500. But if you're on like social.freetalklive.com, it should be 1776. So you got plenty of characters there to express yourself at social.freetalklive.com. And we set the rules because it's our server, and there's basically not very many rules. So it's like, hey, you don't like what you see on there? Just block the person. We don't want to hear about it. We don't want you to. We don't care about your complaints.
I'm just waiting for somebody to get us rated over the things that come out of your mouth.
What do you think that would get us? I mean, we've been rated for a lot of things.
No, not because of what you said, but what somebody does in reaction to what you said. There's not many rules. Blah blah blah.
Okay.
Well, people will take that to the extreme.
You should be able to express yourself. I mean, obviously, you can't break the law or whatever, because we have to their jurisdiction and all that. But as far as your opinions are concerned, you can have whatever opinions you want. Just don't spam us, okay? That's all. So head over to social.freetalklive.com. When you sign up, you will need to input. There's like a little question about, how'd you find, why are you here, that kind of thing. Just mention Free Talk Live, and you'll be good to go. That's how we keep out most of the spam artists. So check it out at social.freetalklive.com. As we continue here, I feel like we've covered the latest Twitter news, and that is that hundreds more employees have been blown out. The people that basically didn't want to come to work, the people that weren't hardcore enough to continue on with under Elon Musk's control, and so that's kind of interesting to watch that develop. But something you've been paying attention to, Chris, has been the development of Mastodon over the years. You encouraged us years ago to get started with Mastodon, and we did. We put one of those servers up, I think it was in 2020, I believe. It's been a couple years now, because I think we had it in place before the raid happened.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure.
So I think it was sometime in 2020. So it's been at least 2 years now that we've had Mastodon going, and it's a great alternative to
I know Matrix was definitely before the raid.
Yep. It's a great alternative, and Matrix is our chat server. That's a different story. There's no news about Matrix tonight, but we do have news about Mastodon. And as I say, you can experience it for yourself at social.freetalklive.com. There are a number of Mastodon servers out there, thousands of them. Some of them are somewhat welcoming, others not so much. They can kind of cultivate whatever community that they want to cultivate. So so take a look around and see what you like, but definitely try ours out if you like this show and you think you would enjoy it. So what do we need to know here with Mastodon? Because they are European-based. There's the main programmers, as I understand it, are based in Germany and France.
That is an interesting question.
At least that's what I've heard.
Yeah, I actually know the guy who one of the guys involved in the protocol, even long before it was Mastodon. Even.
Now the protocol is something that Mastodon uses, right? What's it called?
Right. Now you're getting into the details.
ActivityPub? Is it ActivityPub?
Yeah, that sounds about right.
Yeah. So, sorry, nobody. You said what?
No, that is it. ActivityPub.
Right. So that programmed by the Mastodon people, or are the Mastodon guys just using?
Yeah,
that protocol
they're connected. Okay. I do believe. Let's see. I'm trying to think here. So
because there's other softwares that also use this protocol, not just Mastodon.
Yeah, I'm trying to think. Was it Pump? I think it was Pump.io at one point. And anyway, but basically, it's a standard. It became a web or it's an industry might not be the right word, but it's a standard. It's an internet standard, actually.
It's a protocol that's used by multiple open source systems usually social-related kind of systems.
It's not specifically Mastodon. Mastodon is a piece of software. There's actually competitors to Mastodon, which also use the same protocol, but there's also other programs that they're not a Twitter equivalent that also use that same protocol.
Right.
So,
for example, there's a YouTube clone.
Exactly.
PeerTube that uses it.
Is it?
PeerTube, I think. Yes, that's at least one of them.
Yeah.
Yep.
Although
in
last time I
theory-
looked at them, they weren't ready for prime time.
Yeah, I remember that too, and we checked them out a couple of years before the raid happened. So again, a couple of years ago, and it wasn't ready for prime time then either. But I liked the idea. The idea of it was that you could essentially do live streaming, but without relying on a centralized server. You could do it with the actual clients. The people who are watching your live stream would essentially also restream it to other clients, other people that wanted to watch the streams. It's kind of an interesting concept.
Didn't you try to roll that out actually at one point here?
We had
and it was for a little while. It just wasn't working well enough.
Yeah, it just wasn't that impressive. Not yet.
Not
yet.
Sometimes things come out that are really cool, but if you adopt them too early,
it's hard. It's a hard thing to accomplish because when you're dealing with live streaming video, I mean, it's one thing to share a social media post, which is a relatively small bandwidth thing in most cases, unless there's a video or picture attached to it. But just 200 characters of text is just nothing. But 4 megabit a second streaming video or whatever is a whole other story. And then you're dealing with having to deal with all different internet connections and having them try to restream out, and then you got delays that are coming in.
And it may not. It may work.
The way I'd want to do that would be to set up a front end that uses ActivityPub and then let it use library on the back end so that you're not serving the video. Library is. All you're serving is a URL.
But even, we're talking about live streaming here, not just later playback on demand. We're talking about live streaming. That's the real challenge. Even Library, or rather Odyssey, which is the platform that uses the library system or the library protocol behind it, even they had to go to centralized servers because they couldn't do it with. They couldn't handle the demand that they were having for the videos that they were serving. Even the ones that weren't live, they couldn't handle the demand for it without going to some sort of centralized architecture. So, I mean, to some extent, there's still a place for that, right? Like there's a balance out there in tech. Like we value decentralization here, but even Mastodon is still a centralized server, right? Like that's not the true decentralized.
Yeah, it's what you call federated. Yeah. It's sort of one step away from maybe like
there
true
are many centers,
fully decentralized,
polycentric, perhaps we could call that. Because there's different servers out there.
It's closer to email. What we have with email, where there's not a single provider. Right. There's lots of providers in the interact.
Yeah,
but
you don't like one, you can pick another one or start your own, which is a different story than just Twitter or Facebook.
Right. A truly decentralized app would be something something closer to that. I'm trying to think if there's any good examples of it.
We had one that we experimented with a few years ago. I had Michael Hampton put up a server. It was called Pub something, a Manyverse Pub, I think was what it was called.
Is that truly decentralized? I don't know if it is.
Yes, it was, because you could do it without even using internet. You could have people with their wireless device could connect with one another via Bluetooth or Wi-Fi in a local area, just whoever they could,
and it would
talk
relay
to,
it and so forth.
And it would relay anytime they encountered other devices.
Users.
Really interesting, and again, not quite ready for prime time. Pretty buggy, but the one we were testing was like an alpha release, so it was a pretty early thing. I'd be interested in seeing if it's come along in the last couple of years.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of something that would be more decentralized, and I think probably a good example of something that would be relatively decentralized, although there's a bootstrapping server involved still, might be Napster back in the day. Because
Napster, but they don't even exist anymore in the old format,
but
right?
it's an application that everybody knows, right? Yeah. So that's why it's a good example of something that was decentralized. It wasn't. You still had to connect to a centralized server to find other peers, but the music itself was actually exchanged
on the peers.
Between users entirely.
Well, that's true with the Manyverse Pub thing. Was you could start a server to have the users connect to if you wanted to, but it wasn't a requirement. So it's kind of an interesting.
Yeah, it might have been more of a caching sort of situation to speed things up.
The number here is just to make it easier to find people. That's all. 603-283-6160. That's 603-283-6160. So apparently the EU may be putting Mastodon in jeopardy.
They
That's
really
the story.
hate freedom.
We'll get into it coming up here. Why did you move to the Shire?
I moved here to the Shire because there's other people around who take liberty just as seriously as I do.
I moved to the Shire because I saw videos of people challenging authority and thought that I could get support myself. It called to me, like, do this, right now.
I wanted to be around people like me who got it, and once I got here, I knew there was nowhere else that I wanted to be.
I've always wanted to change the world. So I moved to the Shire to join people who were actually working towards doing the same thing.
The people here are awesome, loving, and positive. It was for the adventure and for the feeling of something important is happening here. And I just wanted to come to sort of be part of that.
Visit ShireSociety.com to read and sign the Shire Society Declaration and learn the reasons why, if you love liberty, you should immigrate to the Shire. Plus, connect with others via the forum at ShireSociety.com. That's ShireSociety.com. So you've signed the Shire Society Declaration and are planning your move to New Hampshire to be around more liberty-oriented people. Next, sign up for the Shire Society Forum at forum.shiresociety.com. There are a bunch of people there who are already in the Shire, and they want to meet you. If you're already in the Shire physically, you should also come by the forums. Remember, not everyone uses Facebook. New people are signing up for the Shire Society Forum every month, so drop in and say hello at forum.shiresociety.com. Tired of cancel culture? Sick of mega tech corporations holding an axe over your head? Join the LRN.FM Matrix chat server. It's self-hosted, so no one else can tell us what to do or say. Don't like the existing channels? You can make your own. You can even connect into some of our channels from other Matrix servers. It's federated. For the full LRN.FM Matrix experience, though, you should join our server via the step-by-step instructions at chat.lrn.fm. Chat.lrn.fm.
So the protection of life, liberty, and property is what the Free State Project is all about. But it's an effort to move 20,000 people who understand.
It's about demonstrating to the entire country
that, yeah, we can have a free market, a truly free market.
Making it just a freer, great place to live.
It's the world's largest voluntarist libertarian community, and it's only getting bigger.
That's amazing, to be able to move to a place where other people passionately believe in being free and independent.
What the Free State Project is managing to do, though, is to put their money where their mouth is. It's physically getting up across the country and saying, let's go someplace and let's demonstrate the power of these ideas. There's a lot of kind of philosophy that surrounds liberty. There's a lot of thinking about it and talking about it. But here in New Hampshire, people are doing it.
101 Reasons Liberty Lives in New Hampshire, a documentary by Free State Project early movers. Watch it free at 101reasonsfilm.com. 101reasonsfilm.com. If you want to know the latest about Free Talk Live before we go on the air, all you need to decide is how you want it delivered. It's your choice. Visit news.freetalklive.com to receive our usually weekly news updates by email. Plus, we have a Twitter account at twitter.freetalklive.com, and you can follow us on the decentralized Mastodon platform at toot.freetalklive.com. So please follow us at toot.freetalklive.com and sign up for our emails at news.freetalklive.com. The new 4th edition of Healing Our World, The Compassion of Libertarianism, will take your understanding of liberty to a deeper level and has over 1,300 updated references, new cartoons, and a foreword by Dr. Ron Paul. With discounts for multiple book purchases, the 4th edition of Healing Our World is a great gift for the liberals, pragmatists, environmentalists, and Christians in your life who think libertarianism is cold-hearted. Get yours today at healing.freetalklive.com and use promo code FTL for a $5 discount.
Yep, we still do email. Drop your email address in the entry box at freetalklive.com, and you'll be kept in the loop with Free Talk Live.
It is Free Talk Live, and you can join the show here. The number is 603-283-6160. That's 603-283-6160. And joining you here tonight, it's Ian.
And Chris.
And nobody.
And also want to make sure that you know about what's been going on with Camp Lejeune. If you've worked or lived at Camp Lejeune between the years of 1953 to 1988, and you've suffered from cancer, Parkinson's disease, or another serious health issue, or one of your family members did, you may be entitled to compensation. They had some contaminants in the drinking water for those years that might have led to those diseases. I want to give you a toll-free number that you can call to find out if you or a loved one are eligible, but there may be some deadlines involved in this, so Don't wait on this. Give a call to 888-918-1037. That's 888-918-1037. If you were at Camp Lejeune from 1953 to 1988 and you've had a serious health issue, money is already set aside. That number again, 888-918-1037. So we were talking about these alternatives to the big mega tech corporation, the Twitters and the Facebooks and the TikToks of the world. And some of them doesn't look like they've really made it. We were talking about this thing called Manyverse, and I looked into it because I said on the air, I wonder how it's coming along. I haven't checked it out in a few years. Technically, I'm not allowed to use social media without government permission, but I certainly can do research on it, and it hasn't been updated in 3 years. So literally, it was probably like around the time that we were experimenting with this was the last time the software was updated. So that one seems to be dead in the water. But Mastodon is alive and well. It's been getting a lot of press recently, especially with the whole Twitter fallout thing. I mean, a lot of people on the left found themselves looking for a new home when Elon Musk took over Twitter. Of course, to be fair, many of them said they were going to leave, but they haven't actually left. But some have, and they've been looking for somewhere else to go, and Mastodon is sort of the go-to alternative as far as there being many options. It's software that is continually being developed.
Yep. It's really and the difference, it's interesting about Mastodon by comparison to like this what was it, Scuttlebutt and some of these others, I guess, or Manyverse, I guess, is that it goes back I think at least a decade or so, and so
Mastodon's development,
Mastodon, and the protocols behind it.
Yeah.
It existed under a prior name, effectively, for a long time, and that was probably more heavily development stage, but nonetheless, it was used. Not a lot of users, but it was used. And over the years, especially over the last 4 or 5 years, Mastodon has really taken off, especially in like libertarian circles. And basically, what I'm trying to say is it's expanded beyond technical, the technicals people, right? Early on it was mostly, and it wasn't even just technical people. Early on it was like free software people, and then it kind of grew, and others started using it, and then the right wing, the right Gab
took it on, and caused a big stir,
right? And now the left is jumping on board. So
Truth Social, Trump's site, is running Mastodon,
right. Yeah. So it's really come, and it's at a point where it's actually a fully developed solution that isn't difficult to use, or
apparently it's difficult to admin from what I'm told by our tech guy.
Yeah, I'll give you that. That's what
But for the user, it's pretty much like Twitter. I mean, they basically have aped what Twitter does.
And some of the admin stuff isn't. I think some of it is
there's
relating
some clunky
to Mastodon, but some of it's, I don't think so much Mastodon as the servers and other related components that it's built on, or
I'll tell you, there's some things that I from an administrative perspective, the users won't know this, but there's some clunky stuff behind the scenes.
Okay.
Dealing with spam is a real problem, so that's why we've turned on the requirement for somebody to actually do a sign up box and explain why they've joined the server. So we literally are having to manually approve everybody that joins the server, because if we don't, there's no way to stop spam.
Yeah.
There's nothing at all. There's no system for that. So that's one problem from the back end. The other one is there's the Mastodon people, the programmers, and it's open source, so someone could theoretically fix this, right? But the people who are currently programming it, they make it so there's like this feature that certain story might be trending, right? Meaning that multiple people on your server or on other servers are posting about the same story, right? Whatever that might be. So something in the news, multiple people have posted the same link, and then the back end of Mastodon will alert the admins, hey, there's this trending story, but they make it so you have to approve every one of them. We started out trying to do this in the very beginning, when this feature came in. It wasn't when we started with Mastodon.
Yeah.
It was a newer feature. And it's just like, I don't have time for this crap. And you can't there's no setting that could just automatically approve all of them, because, we have to, the Mastodon programmers are worried about safety. So they want to make sure they keep everybody safe from dangerous, links and misinformation and things like that. So that's kind of annoying.
I can probably fix that for you relatively quickly.
You got enough on your hands.
I don't know nobody if this is a good idea.
Don't need you taking any focus off of Cell 411. I know a lot of people are really concerned with seeing that thing come to fruition. So That's a whole other story.
So, it's interesting that we should be speaking of this because I think some of the times, sometimes certain features get added. And I don't necessarily know that this is the situation in this particular case with Mastodon, but some of these features are actually getting added. Like, for example, the pop-up, right? Every website you got to click on I accept for cookies and things, right?
Yeah.
That was a European thing, right? It was a European law that they passed. And as a result,
everybody's obeying it.
Every platform, every software developer added some functionality to the default.
Yeah.
And so that's why you run into that. Even if you're not on a European website and you're on a US website,
we don't do it on our site, by the way.
I know you don't. We don't either on my company's site either. But it's one of these things that ends up in there because of
compliance.
Government.
They just want to comply to the maximum. Corporations always want to comply to the maximum for the most part. That way, they don't have to think about it.
In some respects,
I've got a question on that, Chris.
Yeah.
Why do you think that sites haven't said, don't look at the IP address of the incoming connection and say, oh, this person isn't from Europe. We don't need to show them the cookie box.
That's a good question, and I don't have an answer to that. If I had to speculate, I'm guessing it's because somebody just, I don't know, like nobody, I don't know if it's probably not built into this software, like the default tools that people are using. So, and if it's not, it means it's work for somebody to actually go in and like add that functionality. And you're simply trying to comply with the law in those cases.
They took the easy way out. They just apply it to everybody.
Right. I think that's what it ultimately comes down to. Probably, it's like, am I going to just let it happen on every user, or am I going to go and spend, who knows how many hours trying to add in some sort of code or, find a plugin, to make it so that it only shows up for, Europe. And there's other potential reasons too. Like, for example, just because Europe has this law, it doesn't mean that, there aren't maybe other countries that have this law. And if you want to make sure you're compliant, you just let it happen everywhere.
The max.
Right, exactly.
So what is the Digital Services Act, and how could it possibly be affecting the furtherance of Mastodon?
Yeah, so the Digital Services Act is a European act that they're probably is going to pass here. And
most of the tyrannical internet stuff seems to happen in Europe first.
Yeah.
Although Australia had some bad stuff back in the day. But anyway, go ahead.
Yeah. So it's basically a response to, big tech is the idea. But so let me read some of it.
So the government of the EU is positioning itself as trying to, quote unquote, fight big tech.
Yeah, it's I think along those lines. They're trying to fight big tech by incorporating like censorship, something to that effect. So it's been around. So let me back up a second here and say this is stories from Tech Press, techpolicy.press.
All right.
And it's titled, "Can Mastodon Survive Europe's Digital Services Act?" Yes, in the process of trying to regulate big tech, they're going to undermine the small tech.
Wait, I'm shocked by this. You're telling me the government regulations actually hurt the little guy? Huh.
Yeah.
Wow.
Who would have thought? It's been around 2 weeks since Elon Musk, the world's richest man, acquired Twitter, and already increasing fears of what this means.
Elon Musk, that's the trans version of Elon Musk. Sorry, you said Ellen.
I did, didn't I?
I'm just waiting for his first scandal, which of course will be Elongate.
Yeah, right. Increasing fears of what this means for free speech on the microblogging, I love how they describe it as a microblogging platform, have begun to proliferate, with Musk firing some of Twitter's key personnel, including Twitter's legal chief, and terminating contracts with outsourced content moderators. Many users are looking for an alternative.
Indeed. And I'm going to predict that Mastodon will survive because it's open source software and it doesn't matter whether the developers
it's going to survive. Whether it survives in Europe is the question.
We'll get into it coming up here. Can you run a server in Europe is ultimately, I guess, going to be what they're looking at
without being
here.
shut down.
Yeah, we'll talk about it coming up, and you can share your thoughts. What is this Digital Services Act, and could it be coming to the United States?
No.
Hour 2 is coming up.
Did you or someone you love work, live, or serve at Camp Lejeune between 1953 and 1988? If you or someone you know lived, served, or worked at Camp Lejeune between 1953 and 1988 and has cancer, Parkinson's disease, or another serious health issue, they are entitled to compensation. To see if they are eligible, they need to call Liberty Legal. Contaminants in the drinking water have led to these serious diseases, and legislation is now available for veterans and family members who may qualify for financial help from the government. There may be a time deadline, so don't wait. Call 888-918-1037. Anyone that has lived, worked, or served at Camp Lejeune from 1953 to 1988 and has had cancer, Parkinson's disease, or another serious health issue, the money is already set aside. 888-918-1037. 888-918-1037.
My name is Jacob Hornberger. I'm president of the Future of Freedom Foundation, which Congressman Ron Paul awarded for having an outstanding freedom website. Write us at fff@fff.org, and we'll send you a free 3-month subscription to our monthly journal of libertarian essays and our booklet, Economic Liberty in the Constitution, which George Mason University economics professor Walter Williams praised in a recent column. That's fff@fff.org.
What if you want to hear the latest episode of Free Talk Live, but all you have is your phone, you forgot to download our archive, and you have no data connection? You can call our Listen line at 641-793-0191. That's a long-distance number, so you may incur charges. If not, listen as long as you want. 641-793-0191. The Free Talk Live Listen line, 641-793-0191.
You're listening to the live edition of Free Talk Live. Hour number 2 is next, after the news, here on the Liberty Radio Network at LRN.FM.
From Feature Story News in Washington, I'm Simon Marks. U.S. Attorney General Merrick Garland has appointed a special prosecutor to head up 2 criminal probes into former President Donald Trump. Jack Smith, a former war crimes prosecutor, will now lead the investigations into whether Donald Trump or members of his inner circle broke the law ahead of the January 6th riots last year on Capitol Hill, or with regard to the former president's handling of classified documents recovered from his Mar-a-Lago estate. The news was announced by the Attorney General.
Based on recent developments, including the former president's announcement that he is a candidate for president in the next election, and the sitting president's stated intention to be a candidate as well, I have concluded that it is in the public interest to appoint a special counsel. Mr. Smith will begin his work as special counsel immediately.
Reacting, former President Trump said the move again revealed the politicization of the Department of Justice and indicated that he will not cooperate with Mr. Smith. In other news, as many as 1,200 remaining employees of Twitter have reportedly resigned rather than commit to new so-called hardcore working conditions imposed by owner Elon Musk. With more from FSN's bureau in Silicon Valley, Ira Spitzer.
The social media platform had about 2,900 employees before a deadline on Thursday to either commit to Musk's demands to work long hours and be hardcore or leave with 3-month severance. The situation prompted fears that the site would cease to function properly without people to run it. Musk immediately laid off half of Twitter's staff earlier this month after purchasing the company for $44 billion and taking it private.
Swedish investigators say they have found traces of explosives at the site of undersea blasts which hit the Nord Stream 1 and 2 pipelines in September. FSN's Giles Gibson reports from the Estonian capital, Tallinn.
Well, we've heard from Dmitry Peskov, who is the spokesperson for the Russian President Vladimir Putin, saying that they want to see a full assessment of the damage before there's any sort of discussion about repairs in the future. Also saying the Kremlin that it's going to be very important to establish who was responsible. Now, the Russian government has previously actually pointed the finger at the British Royal Navy accusing them of being involved. The British government categorically denied that.
The publisher of the Washington Post newspaper is slamming the Biden administration after the State Department said Saudi Arabia's Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman is covered by immunity and cannot face a lawsuit over the killing of Saudi-American journalist Jamal Khashoggi. In a statement, Fred Ryan said the US government is granting a license to kill to the Crown Prince. From bureaus worldwide, this is FSN. With FSN Spotlight, I'm Simon Marks, looking in more detail today at the decision by several supermarkets across the UK to ration the number of eggs individual customers are permitted to buy. The move comes as the largest outbreak ever of bird flu affects Britain, with thousands of chickens being culled as a precautionary measure. Unseasonably hot temperatures over the summer and supply chain difficulties caused by the war in Ukraine have also contributed to a 35% rise in the average price of a dozen eggs. Andrew Meredith is editor of Britain's Farmers Weekly.
The overriding factor from the farmer's perspective is just a simple failure since the spring to heed the warnings of the industry and pass on some of those increased costs of production to the consumer. We've seen prices go up on the shelves, but the money just hasn't filtered back to the farmers and the farm gate price. Unfortunately, producers are losing about 10 pence a dozen on average now.
Some supermarkets are preventing customers from buying more than 2 boxes of eggs at a time, and retailers are trying to seek alternative sources of supply in Italy and other parts of Europe. But egg farmers say the situation is expected to worsen, with the National Farmers Union arguing the difficulties are the most serious situation for food production in the UK since the end of the Second World War. The main news again, US Attorney General Merrick Garland is appointing a special prosecutor to head up 2 criminal probes into former President Donald Trump. Hundreds of Twitter employees have reportedly resigned rather than commit to new so-called hardcore working conditions imposed by Elon Musk. And Swedish investigators say they have found traces of explosives at the site of undersea blasts that hit the Nord Stream 1 and 2 pipelines in September. And that is the latest feature story news. Simon Marks reporting.
Americans everywhere are enjoying their Sundays after successfully completing Mother's Day in less than 20 minutes this morning. Dads were able to wrap up breakfast in bed by 9:18 a.m., giving them plenty of time to mill about the garage for the rest of the afternoon. While children who spent a minute and a half this morning hugging their mothers are currently out playing street hockey. And after completely fulfilling their Mother's Day obligations with a store-bought card, teens are now free to leave and spend the day with their friends. The moms, who were quickly and efficiently lavished with cards, flowers, assurances of love, and 7 full minutes of family togetherness, praised the competency with which the holiday was carried out.
Oh, it was great. Charles and the kids made me feel completely appreciated, but they ended the holiday before I even got out of bed. Guess I'll go water the plants now.
But before the day-long celebration concluded early this morning, moms had their own job to do, making a brief, obligatory phone call to their own mothers.
This is the Onion News Network.
Free Talk Live.
It is Free Talk Live, and you can join the program here. The number is 603-283-6160. That's 603-283-6160. Joining you tonight, it's Ian.
And Chris.
Nobody. Nobody is here as well. And, of course, you can bring up absolutely anything. We were just about to get into the Digital Services Act. It's a piece of legislation proposed in the European Union that could very well be coming to a country government gang near you, government goon squad. And we'll find out what they're going to do over there in the EU with this new Digital Services Act. And will it affect independent operators like Mastodon? And if so, how? We were just getting into detail on some of these alternatives to Twitter and Facebook, these big centralized big tech services. What are some of the alternatives out there? We talked about Mastodon. We run our own Mastodon server. It's not based in the EU, thank goodness, but it is over at social.freetalklive.com. And I was talking about this other thing because we pointed out that while Mastodon is more decentralized than Twitter and Facebook, it's still a centralized server sitting in some rack somewhere.
Yeah, it's they call it the Fediverse, right?
Correct, because there are thousands of Mastodon servers out there. But still, my point is, ours is still a centralized server sitting somewhere, and every server is centralized in that way. But it is polycentric, the Mastodon Fediverse, in that there are many centers, and you can choose the one that you want, or you can make your own. And then I mentioned this other thing called Manyverse, and I need to correct what I said on the air last hour for those that were maybe interested and then disappointed when I said that they actually weren't developed in the last 3 years. It turns out that I was looking on the wrong place on their website. I'd clicked on the releases tab on their GitLab, and it showed 3 years ago was the last release. But apparently they've been posting their releases somewhere else.
Oh, that makes a lot more sense. Yeah, because a lot of places they don't. Most, I think, they don't release releases on GitHub.
They just update the
or
source
GitLab
code.
or whatever. Right. That's just where they maintain the sources, and then they'll publish it somewhere else. The actual binary.
So turns out they have an active blog at the Manyverse website, and it was actually updated 2 weeks ago. So those who are interested in an actually decentralized thing where you don't even need a server, where it's just person to person, peer to peer, social media. It's a very interesting concept. I would love to see this thing kind of go somewhere, because to not rely on a server means that it cannot be stopped, basically. I mean, it's very interesting kind of technology, meaning that even if the internet goes down, as long as you still have power, you can still transfer data from one device to the next, literally like daisy chaining, if you will, or hopping and skipping between individuals' phones and laptops and things. Very interesting stuff. So check out the Manyverse. It might be worth another look. It was pretty rough 3 years ago, but maybe it's gotten a lot better since then. At least I hope so. Anyway, Chris, tell us about the Digital Services Act.
Yeah, so a substantial number are migrating to the Fediverse, and specifically to Mastodon, a similar microblogging platform that is to Twitter, that has been called Twitter with the underlying architecture of email. Mastodon's decentralization raises substantial questions about how existing regulatory regimes, such as Europe's Digital Services Act, will apply. So, what is Europe's Digital Services Act? So the move to Mastodon, the Fediverse, a portmanteau of Federation and Universe, is a network of interconnected servers that communicate with each other based on decentralized networking protocols.
Sometimes they do. Sometimes they break up with one another and they say, I don't want to hear from you anymore. And that's one of the freedoms of the Fediverse.
That's still... Yeah, I think this is pretty accurate. Decentralized networking protocol. It's a decentralized networking protocol, but users are generally not going to run their own server.
Correct.
But if you wanted to, you could. You could even build the server part into a client if you wanted to.
Yes, and that's why there are multiple clients out there.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's true. And then I guess that's an interesting question. I mean, is it if ever, and that's the thing, it's like if everybody did run their own server, then it would be decentralized, not just.
But no one is going to, and everyone is never going to run their own server.
No, they wouldn't, because of the way it's designed.
Number one, it's complex, and number two, the average user does not know how to administer a server.
Yeah, see, an optimal decentralized networking protocol, I think, wouldn't be so complicated that you would need an administrator, right? But these servers can be used for web publishing and file hosting and allow users to communicate with each other despite being on independent servers.
Now, let me just say, it's one of the downsides of Mastodon. There was an article written by, again, like I said, there's been recently a lot of interest in Mastodon in the mainstream, and so we've seen a lot of stories promoting it, but there was one story written by a guy that was a little disappointed with his experience, and, it can be kind of clunky, for instance, if you're trying to connect with somebody who's not on the same server. It can be done, but you kind of have to know where you're going. Like, I don't think you can easily just search for somebody. Like, if I just go on to any old Mastodon server and I search for Mr. Penguin, which is your username, Chris, it's probably not going to find you.
You would need to know
where
full
your server
username is, and it would be, in my case, it's at Mr. Well, you know what? Honestly, I'm not 100% sure off the top of my head, but I think it's at Mr. _Penguin at social.bobcall.me.
You have to know the whole
So-
thing. And so it's not as easy to sort of discover new things that are off of your server, and that's just one of the downsides of decentralization, at least at this point in the game, is, especially if the servers are disfederated from one another, then there's a broken link between them and you're never going to find people on that other server. And that's just the way it is.
Yeah, my impression has been that if you've got the person's username, you can follow anybody you want.
That's correct. I'm talking about discovery.
Right. So it's an interesting question. So how does that compare to Twitter? I guess on the case of Twitter is your username is going to be shorter, and therefore it's a little bit easier to find somebody else.
Yeah, well, Twitter is going to show you everybody in their database that matches Donald Trump or whatever you put into the search. Now, then you have to figure out which one's the real one.
Which one's the real one.
But that can be a problem on a busy Mastodon server too. But my point is, if you're on a server that has the content you're looking for, then you're probably going to be fine if it's got enough users to keep you busy, but you're not going to be easily able to discover things that are happening on the other servers. You can see it like by looking on, they show like on Mastodon, for instance, there's a tab that shows you sort of the whole global Mastodon, like every post that's connected to that server. You can still kind of see other things that are happening out there, but it's a bit overwhelming, and it may or may not be interesting to you. So, like I said, this is sort of the nature of the decentralization. It's got its ups and it's got its downs, and that's just the reality of it. So pick a server that you like. Basically.
Yeah, I mean, I think the biggest issue, if I'm not mistaken, is just that Twitter's huge.
Yeah,
so
well,
the
there's a lot
number
of users.
the number of users out there is going to be greater than
and
you may
certainly
not
cannot
be able to find everybody you want to.
Right, and you certainly cannot follow
with.
somebody on Mastodon through Twitter, and you can't follow somebody on Facebook through Twitter, whereas you can follow other people on other Mastodon servers from a Mastodon server. So again, ups and downs. What else do we need to know?
Yeah, so content moderation on Mastodon. Ultimately, though, the future of Mastodon will hang on the way its individual instances. Now, the funny thing is, the story is basically saying that if Mastodon doesn't moderate content, because that's what the Digital Services Act effectively is about, it will get shut down or something to that effect.
Okay.
Its individual instances and site as a collective whole deals with content moderation and free speech. Mastodon's appeal lies in its decentralization. When Eugene founded the network in 2016, it came from a feeling of distrust of the top-down control that Twitter exercised, which is kind of interesting because it wasn't for the freedom, it was because of who was in control, it sounds like. Countering this distrust, while also proudly claiming that it is not for sale, the Mastodon network has no single owner or administrator that can set the rules. Instead, the administrator of each local instance sets the rules for their server, which users have to abide by. If a user disagrees with these rules, they can easily switch to an instance that aligns with their viewpoint. Yeah, and I believe you can actually export your user or something to that effect.
You can, and you can export all your posts from one server and then, in theory, import it to another. They can disable that, though, if they want to, as I understand it. I don't know if you can disable both features, but I've seen one or the other that has been disabled. I think Gab is one of them that
probably
disables something. There's more coming up here. But I'm curious as to what the Digital Service Act is going to restrict exactly. I hope it gets into it. It's Free Talk Live.
Get to that.
Did you or someone you love work, live, or serve at Camp Lejeune between 1953 and 1988? If you or someone you know lived, served, or worked at Camp Lejeune between 1953 and 1988 and has cancer, Parkinson's disease, or another serious health issue, they are entitled to compensation. To see if they are eligible, they need to call Liberty Legal. Contaminants in the drinking water have led to these serious diseases, and legislation is now available for veterans and family members who may qualify for financial help from the government. There may be a time deadline, so don't wait. Call 888-918-1037. Anyone that has lived, worked, or served at Camp Lejeune from 1953 to 1988 and has had cancer, Parkinson's disease, or another serious health issue, the money is already set aside. 888-918-1037. 888-918-1037.
Do you feel like your nation, state, or community no longer holds your values? Have you dreamt of a place where people agree that liberty is important and are free to pursue their projects so long as they respect the property of others? There are many people just like you that are discovering freeprivatecities.com. Their social media links are at the upper right of the page at freeprivatecities.com. All skill levels will be needed when the first of the Free Private Cities opens. It's sooner than you think. Stop arguing and build. freeprivatecities.com.
I'm a little obsessed with My Magic Mud. Several years ago, I met Jessica Armand, the founder and CEO of My Magic Mud, and I didn't even know my teeth were coffee stained. A week's worth of use convinced me, and now I use it every 3 or 4 days. It's clinically proven to whiten teeth, and I think it cleans better too. My Magic Mud's available at most local health food stores, Sprouts, Natural Grocers, CVS, Walmart's Natural Beauty Aisle, but I can get it for you for 20% off with coupon code FTL20 at mymagicmud.com. FTL20 mymagicmud.com.
If you're looking for work, there's a piece of paper more important than your resume. It's the cover letter attached if you're snail mailing, or the email to which you attach your resume. Make it 4 short paragraphs. Paragraph 1, say that you're applying for work. The person you're sending to gets a ton of mail about all sorts of things. If you have a password, that's your first sentence. Tom Nelson tells me you and I should meet. Paragraph 2, what you do and how that relates to the opening. Be as specific as possible. Paragraph 3, why you want this particular job. I'm originally from Boston, so I know the market well. I have family and friends in the area, so this would be a homecoming for me. Paragraph 4, unless the job posting stipulates no calls, and I will call you to follow up. Thank you in advance for your time. From survivalspeech.com, I'm Holland Cook.
Tired of cancel culture? Sick of mega tech corporations holding an axe over your head? Join the LRN.FM Matrix chat server. It's self-hosted, so no one else can tell us what to do or say. Don't like the existing channels? You can make your own. You can even connect into some of our channels from other Matrix servers. It's federated. For the full LRN.FM Matrix experience, though, you should join our server via the step-by-step instructions at chat.lrn.fm. Chat.lrn.fm.
There are basically 2 types of advertising, direct response and branding. Radio's great for direct response with its low cost to listener ratio, but audio can't be beat for branding, which is a longer-term endeavor. You want to be the first thing that someone thinks of when they think about your product or service. If you have a local business that you want kept top of mind in your community, call the station. If you need national reach, Free Talk Live's got around 200 radio stations, millions of monthly listening sessions, can suit all budgets, and if we don't think we're right for you, we'll tell you. Email me, mark@freetalklive.com.
Got Telegram? You can follow our channel there and discuss show prep with other listeners at telegram.freetalklive.com.
Yep, it is Free Talk Live. You can join the show here. The number is 603-283-6160. That's 603-283-6160. Ian, Chris, nobody here with you tonight. You can join us online, of course, anytime you want. Just head over to freetalklive.com and enjoy the various features that you will find there. Once again, that is freetalklive.com. And Free Talk Live is brought to you by Bitcoin.com. If you're ready to start learning about cryptocurrency like Bitcoin and Bitcoin Cash, then get over to Bitcoin.com and click Get Started. At the top of the page, you will find some introductory videos that will help you understand some of the new concepts that are involved in crypto. And these are important ideas to get down. We're talking a lot about decentralization tonight as far as social media is concerned. Cryptocurrency takes the idea of money, of currency, and decentralizes that, taking it out of the hands of the central bankers and the governments of the world. So, that's kind of getting you started. Go click Bitcoin.com. Go to Get Started and start learning more about crypto before you get into it, right? Because there's a lot of mainstream attention on crypto right now, a lot of negative mainstream attention with the FTX debacle that has been going on, with this basically alleged Ponzi scheme, scam artists running a cryptocurrency exchange. And of course, as we've explained in recent days, once again, the lesson to take away from FTX is not your keys, not your coins. If you give your cryptocurrency to somebody else to hold on to, then you're at their mercy. Maybe they're going to...
I would characterize it as a money laundering scheme. And the reason for that is because apparently a lot of the money that the government has been sending to the Ukraine The Ukraine had then turned around and invested in FTX, and FTX then turned around and made huge donations to the Democratic Party. So it was a way for Biden to steal money from the U.S. government and to use that money to give his own party a political advantage. Plus, they were propping up rhinos like this speaker that everybody hates. But mostly it was going to the Democrats. So this, if it's ever investigated, which I kind of doubt, could be a big deal.
So anyway, check out Bitcoin.com, click Get Started at the top of the page, and get started learning about crypto. If you want to get the latest news headlines, they've got them there over at news.bitcoin.com. So we can talk about cryptocurrency later on, but we're in the midst of this story about the European Union and this Digital Services Act. So, Chris, you were telling us a little bit about that.
Yeah, Mastodon and the Digital Services Act. As Mastodon continues to gain popularity, in a question that remains is how existing legislative efforts may affect the entire website and or its instances. That's such a weird way to phrase that. Its entire website. There's not a single website. That's the very weird thing about this. There's a website you can go to download the software and set up a server.
This is a failing of whoever's writing this article not understanding the technology they're even talking about.
Which is really weird because it's a tech policy site to cover this kind of thing. You think they'd understand it. And it seems like they kind of mostly understand it. So maybe it's just poorly worded. But anyway,
could be.
Notably, the Digital Services Act in Europe was created to address content moderation issues that manifest themselves in much larger and more centralized platforms like Facebook. What will the DSA's effect be on Mastodon? Currently, there are more than 3,000 instances on the network, all with their own users, guidelines, and administrators. In this context, the DSA does not provide clarity on questions. Of course it doesn't, because this is the thing. Like these government bureaucrats, they create these, or politicians, they create these laws, and they assume everybody can like everybody's a huge player in the market. When in reality, there are often small players in the market that can't possibly comply, let alone read the laws. They don't have teams of lawyers. And by the very existence of the law, you effectively criminalize the small operator. The DSA does not provide clarity on questions of a decentralized social media. However, based on the categorizations of the DSA, it's most probable that each instance could be seen as an independent online platform on which a user hosts and publishes content that can reach potentially unlimited number of users. Well, yeah, and here's the thing, though. It's like some of it's based on, I think, the number of users, I believe. So
meaning the DSA's application?
I think so. I think it's going to get into it here, though, so we're going to find out. But yeah, but that could be a problem then, because if it's based on the number of users, it depends on how some bureaucrat ends up deciding how many users you've got.
Well, it does say on most Mastodon instances, when you are going to read about the server or sign up, it will tell you this server has 1,000 users or whatever.
Are they counting it as the network of Mastodon instances, or is it just your server? And I bet you that this particular act probably isn't clear about that, which then means it's a bureaucrat question, which ends up meaning you could be guilty of a crime by setting up a single server with a single user on it if you're not compliant with the act. I'm not saying that's the case here. There might be other things like dollar amounts. Maybe you have to bring in a certain amount of money. But anyway, let's find out. Thus, each of these instances will need to comply with a set of minimum obligations for intermediary and hosting services, including having a single point of contact and legal representative, providing clear terms and conditions, publishing biannual transparency reports. This is the crazy thing. Wow. It's like if you're a single server administration doing this on like a side hobby, right?
Yeah, you just put this up because your friends wanted to join.
Right, and you've got a dozen users, right? You
need a legal representative,
right? You're gonna have to file these reports with the government.
That's insane.
Absolutely.
And if you don't, then what? Jail time?
Potentially, if they want to go after you.
Right.
If you're a minority that the government wants to crack down on, maybe you're on the right, maybe you're on the left, maybe you're a libertarian. Having a notice in action mechanism and communicating information about I have no idea.
Notice in action. I'll look it up.
Who knows? It's probably some legal term, right? So, who knows what you might think it is might be entirely different than what it actually is. This is why you need lawyers, a team of lawyers to look at these acts to figure out whether or not you're even in compliance. And if you ask 5 different lawyers, you're going to get 5 different answers. So it gets even more complicated. And Ian, you're a perfect person and know that perfectly well, I think, Kevin, in the Crypto 6 case where you've got different size, different lawyers saying different things.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Having a notice and action mechanism and communicating information about removals or restrictions to both notice and content providers. I have no idea what that means. Restrictions to both notice and content providers. Is the content provider the person making a post? I have no idea.
Be. That's sounds like it.
It just seems, it just seems so weird. Today, given the nonprofit model and limited volunteer administration of most existing instances, all Mastodon servers would seem to be exempt from obligations for large online platforms. Nonetheless, now you have to remember here, that's today, but Mastodon is growing. It's still in its infancy. If Mastodon grows to any size, it's basically going to become very quickly, any given instance, it's going to meet whatever the number is that this act has. And it's going to get into that a little bit here in a moment, I believe.
The number, if you want to join the show, it's 603-283-6160. You can bring up whatever you want. And it sounded like some of those requirements applied to everybody that's running one of these servers.
It may.
Was it? Maybe I misunderstood. There's more coming up, though. You can join the show. It's Free Talk Live. Hire your lawyers.
Did you or someone you love work, live, or serve at Camp Lejeune between 1953 and 1988? If you or someone you know lived, served, or worked at Camp Lejeune between 1953 and 1988 and has cancer, Parkinson's disease, or another serious health issue, they are entitled to compensation. To see if they are eligible, they need to call Liberty Legal. Contaminants in the drinking water have led to these serious diseases, and legislation is now available for veterans and family members who may qualify for financial help from the government. There may be a time deadline, so don't wait. Call 888-918-1037. Anyone that has lived, worked, or served at Camp Lejeune from 1953 to 1988 and has had cancer, Parkinson's disease, or another serious health issue, the money is already set aside. 888-918-1037. 888-918-1037.
From Feature Story News in Washington, I'm Simon Marks. U.S. Attorney General Merrick Garland has appointed a special prosecutor to head up 2 criminal probes into former President Donald Trump. Jack Smith, a former war crimes prosecutor, will now lead the investigations into whether Donald Trump or members of his inner circle broke the law ahead of the January 6th riots last year on Capitol Hill, or with regard to the former president's handling of classified documents recovered from his Mar-a-Lago estate. The news was announced by the Attorney General.
Based on recent developments, including the former president's announcement that he is a candidate for president in the next election, and the sitting president's stated intention to be a candidate as well, I have concluded that it is in the public interest to appoint a special counsel. Mr. Smith will begin his work as special counsel immediately.
Reacting, former President Trump said the move again revealed the politicization of the Department of Justice and indicated that he will not cooperate with Mr. Smith. In other news, as many as 1,200 remaining employees of Twitter have reportedly resigned rather than commit to new so-called hardcore working conditions imposed by owner Elon Musk. With more from FSN's bureau in Silicon Valley, Ira Spitzer.
The social media platform had about 2,900 employees before a deadline on Thursday to either commit to Musk's demands to work long hours and be hardcore or leave with 3-month severance. The situation prompted fears that the site would cease to function properly without people to run it. Musk immediately laid off half of Twitter's staff earlier this month after purchasing the company for $44 billion and taking it private.
Swedish investigators say they have found traces of explosives at the site of undersea blasts which hit the Nord Stream 1 and 2 pipelines in September. FSN's Giles Gibson reports from the Estonian capital, Tallinn.
Well, we've heard from Dmitry Peskov, who is the spokesperson for the Russian President Vladimir Putin, saying that they want to see a full assessment of the damage before there's any sort of discussion about repairs in the future. Also saying, the Kremlin, that it's going to be very important to establish who was responsible. Now, the Russian government has previously actually pointed the finger at the British Royal Navy, accusing them of being involved. The British government categorically denied that.
The publisher of the Washington Post newspaper is slamming the Biden administration after the State Department said Saudi Arabia's Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman is covered by immunity and cannot face a lawsuit over the killing of Saudi-American journalist Jamal Khashoggi. In a statement, Fred Ryan said the US government is granting a license to kill to the Crown Prince. From bureaus worldwide, this is FSN.
Our Matrix server is about as free as internet chat can be. Join the existing rooms or create your own at chat.freetalklive.com.
It is Free Talk Live, and you can join the program here. You can bring up whatever you want. The number is 603-283-6160. That's 603-283-6160. We're finding out about the Digital Services Act. This new piece of legislation hasn't passed yet, I don't think, in the EU, but I mean, why wouldn't it?
This is the EU. It's going to pass at some point.
There's a good chance of this thing going through. And it's ostensibly supposed to act against big tech. But what's not clear so far is whether even the little guy is going to have to jump through these hoops. And they probably will.
You mean Hunter Biden?
No, he's exempt.
Okay.
He's in the crime family.
Because Pedo Pete was the big guy, so I thought Hunter Biden might be the little guy.
I got a number here, and it's tiny.
What's the number?
It's 10 million euros or 50 employees. And now people might be thinking that seems like a lot, but it's actually not.
Wait. So they're saying these regulations would apply to companies that meet that specification?
Yeah.
Okay.
So any company or entity, I guess, that has more than 50 employees would have to comply. Or if they've got 10 million in annual turnover.
Okay. So this, in theory, would not include the hobbyist who's putting up their server just for their buddies or something.
Not currently, probably. But as soon as, so to give people some perspective on this, a small company that has, maybe 4 or 5 employees might do $500,000 in turnover or something like that a year. That's not unusual. So 10 million euros is not that isn't really that big. And what constitutes a small business generally is something like 500 employees. So
wow.
Yeah, 500 employees.
500?
500 employees or less is what constitutes a small business generally.
All right, we can go back to the story. I do have Chuck on the line here in Washington. Open phones. You can bring up anything. Chuck, what's on your mind?
Well, the reason why I called, is because I heard the guy that sounds like he's on a telephone right now bring up the issue of campaign financing and how he started bitching about that, and I'm thinking,
I don't know if we're listening. If you're listening to the same show, but you're welcome to comment on campaign finance if you like. Go ahead.
Oh yeah, I'm definitely listening to the same show because I'm listening on 1340 AM KTOX in Needles, California.
Okay.
So this guy is talking about right now. He's on the air. He is talking about campaign finance reform and his problems with the Democrats, and this and that and stuff like that. We had the chance to address campaign finance reform in 2006 with the Citizens United. I believe it was somewhere around there. I could be wrong, but it sounds like that we've been down this road before. And I keep hearing people, with their grievances against campaign financing and, we got to do something. But where were you? Where were you back in the day when this actually was an issue? Now
I was here.
Biden.
And
we gotta go after
let me
Hunter
give you a
Biden.
response, if I may. The first thing is Citizens United. How much do you know about that case? Do you know what the cause of action was?
Do you know what I know about Citizens United? I'll tell you what. In the Congress in this year, we're going to go after Hunter Biden. That's how much I know about Citizens United. Idiot.
Okay, well, let me tell you what Citizens United was about.
He hung
idiot.
up, by the way.
What it was about was a company made a movie that was critical of Hillary Clinton. And they brought action against this company saying, you can't make this movie because it is effectively a campaign donation to Hillary Clinton's opponent. So basically, if Citizens United had not been decided the way it was decided, every movie studio would be forced to stop making movies about political figures which were not fawning endorsements of them. Okay, so that is what Citizens United was about, and we're very lucky that it was decided the way it was, because otherwise there would be no movies talking about political figures. The second thing is, my issue that I was talking about earlier was not about campaign finance so much as it was about money being stolen from the people, sent to the Ukraine, routed back to FTX, and then donated to the Democratic Party. That's not about campaign finance. That's about theft and money laundering.
I don't even know. I have no idea if he was actually listening to this show, because number one, you don't sound like
he was. I think he just had no idea what I was talking about when I was talking about FTX.
Yeah, FTX is a cryptocurrency, a failed cryptocurrency exchange, but you don't sound like you're on a phone line. You sound very high quality to me. It sounds almost like you're sitting here in the studio. So I don't know. That's what made me think maybe he was listening to some other show, because you barely even mentioned. I mean, we barely even mentioned FTX, and this guy got set off, and then he goes and he insults you, and then hangs up the phone. As soon as he called you an idiot, he hung up the phone. I mean, that's somebody who doesn't want to have a conversation. That's somebody who just wants to do a drive-by.
Yeah, it almost sounded like you might have been trolling. I don't think he was.
No,
but
I think he was really upset and didn't know what he was talking about.
Yeah, probably.
But I'm glad you got out what you had to say.
I'm pretty clear it was that the latter was definitely the case. Whether he was trolling or not, I don't know. But he definitely didn't know what he was talking about.
Indeed. All right. So what else do we need to know, Chris? Are you saying this is going to apply to companies, this Digital Services Act? They're going to highly regulate social media, basically, it sounds like, with over $10 million in revenue and 50 employees. And you're saying that's not as big as it might sound.
It's not at all.
And it's one or the other. It's not both.
Right. And you have to remember, there's a lot of small nonprofits and organizations that that might be quite a few for a typical nonprofit, but if you had a Mastodon instance, right, that you set up as a hobby, right, for example, and you're like, okay, well, I want to keep running it, and Mastodon grows, it's going to end up being the case that you're going to, in the future, need to hire employees. Nonprofits hire employees, by the way, right? And you're going to need to hire those employees, or you're going to need to spend money on it.
And how long is it going to be before Facebook lobbies the EU government to say, hey, this isn't fair. It's applying to us, it's applying to Twitter, but it needs to apply to these smaller Mastodon servers because people are saying offensive things there.
Well, I mean, I don't know. This is already applying to what I would consider a small Mastodon. I mean, we don't have large Mastodon servers yet. Or we don't even have, I mean, we have really, really tiny Mastodon servers in the scheme of things, right?
There are some big ones, but I don't know if they have any revenue.
Not enough to comply, not enough to have it be impacted by this act, right? But my point that I'm trying to make is that, look, we have a Mastodon server, right?
We do, yeah. Social.freetalklive.com.
I don't know how many users it's got, but just imagine if there were actually some substantial number of users, you're going to need more than one system administrator to administer it, right? It would actually require something. And
we're up to 522.
Right. Okay. So we've got one guy,
but it's probably not
with 500.
Probably not even half of those are active,
Right. 500 is it's so absolutely tiny in the scheme of things when you're talking about billions of people around the world. And I'm trying to think what the population of Europe is, but I believe it's something. I think it might be something like 1 billion people. But the point is, that's a lot of people, right? So if they all migrate from Twitter to Mastodon, or even a decent if Mastodon ends up having a percentage of the market all of these so-called absolutely tiny instances are going to become small instances, and they're going to exceed these numbers here, is what I'm trying to get at.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, something to be concerned with.
Yeah.
For sure.
So this kind of, I mean, the number of, there's not going to be enough volunteers effectively to administer enough absolutely tiny instances in order to scale without having nonprofits with some employees if Mastodon is to grow. So this will absolutely affect small Mastodon instances as time goes on if this passes.
Now, they're also talking about restricting privacy coins in the European Union. I'm wondering, does that have to do with the same Digital Services Act, or is there something else?
No, that's a different act. I'm sure it's got to be a different act.
There's more coming up here. The number is 603-283-6160, and you can bring up whatever's on your mind on Free Talk Live.
Free Talk Live.
To be free is to be clear-headed.
I do encourage people.
Somebody gets down and smokes a joint and gets high. They sit on the couch and they turn into a blob.
Yeah, well, I don't think you know much about people that smoke pot, Christy.
Right. Yeah, Christy.
They procrastinate. That's what you guys were talking about on your show tonight. About
okay, then Christy, then what I can say then is that people that don't smoke pot make sweeping generalizations, because you just did. It seems like the vast majority of humans use some kind of substance throughout their day or week.
Not Christy. She doesn't.
Well,
what a sad state of affairs.
Do you have a cup of coffee in the morning, Christy?
And at this time in our history,
we've always done it. Christy, it's been done throughout humans. People, how many people do you know, Christy, that can't function without a cup of coffee?
Well, you have to have a piece of bread to live, to survive.
We're not talking about food.
Free Talk Live, 7 nights a week from 7 to 10 Eastern, live on the Liberty Radio Network at LRN.FM.
Looking for a great real estate investment? Consider New Hampshire, which is ground zero for the Liberty Movement. Your first call should be to Mark Worden from Porcupine Real Estate. He's more than just a real estate agent. He's your New Hampshire concierge. Where are the best places to live? Do you want farm, city, the burbs, or forest? Do you want a duplex or multifamily building so that renters pay your mortgage? There are homes in all price ranges in New Hampshire, and Mark can help with financing too. Invest in Liberty and property. Mark Worden can help.
PorcupineRealEstate.com.
If you want to know the latest about Free Talk Live before we go on the air, all you need to decide is how you want it delivered. It's your choice. Visit news.freetalklive.com to receive our usually weekly news updates by email. Plus, we have a Twitter account at twitter.freetalklive.com, and you can follow us on the decentralized Mastodon platform at toot.freetalklive.com. So please follow us at toot.freetalklive.com and sign up for our emails at news.freetalklive.com.
Hey, you are going to love the movie Victimless Crime Spree. It's hilarious, heartwarming, and carries a ton of inspiring freedom messages. Feeling down about the lack of liberty in your life? You need to put on this film with some friends and have a good laugh. It's a true story about me and my friends in New Hampshire living free, singing, dancing, and getting arrested. Of course, it's all on video, and the bad guys, the cops, judges, bailiffs, and sheriffs, they all play their part like it's out of a movie or something. You would think we scripted the whole thing, but it's real life. Go ahead and have a watch, and if it's been a while, have another look. I guarantee you'll notice things now that you didn't notice before. And the best part is that you're going to walk away feeling a renewed sense of your own power. You are the master of your destiny, and you will be free in your lifetime. Victimless Crime Spree.
What if you want to hear the latest episode of Free Talk Live, but all you have is your phone, you forgot to download our archive, and you have no data connection? You can call our Listen line at 641-793-0191. That's a long-distance number, so you may incur charges. If not, listen as long as you want. 641-793-0191. The Free Talk Live Listen line, 641-793-0191.
Have you had enough of the big-name web hosting services that are long on promises but short on bleeding-edge features, uptime, and customer service? Try Agorist Hosting, the agile web host that offers full concierge service from website redesign, full e-commerce solutions, custom apps for your Shopify store, IPFS integration, and more. Agorist Hosting is ready to take your web presence into the future. To get started, head over to agoristhosting.com.
You can stick it to the man and big tech. Join our FTL social mastodon at social.freetalklive.com.
It is Free Talk Live, and you can join the show here. The number is 603-283-6160. Ian, Chris, nobody here tonight with you. You can join us online, of course, anytime over at freetalklive.com. And I want to say thank you to Craig Thomas, who is a Free Talk Live supporter of our AMPS program. Craig is silver level, which means he's doing as we request and sending us $5 a month through our AMPS program at amps.freetalklive.com. You get some cool perks for that, including the access to the AMP Only podcast, which has the full radio show included, but without any of the commercials, any of the recorded commercials. So check that out over at amps.freetalklive.com. You get all the perks there at amps.freetalklive.com, and you help us advertise, market, promote, and support Free Talk Live, as Craig Thomas has done. We're going to get into more bad news from the world of the regulatory EU, the European Union. They're apparently going to be targeting privacy coins next, or at least that's the plan. We'll get into that story here. Chris has got that for us, but other folks are on the phones. We're going to go to the calls here. We got Galina to start things out here, calling from Ukraine. Galina, you're on Free Talk Live. Go ahead.
Hi, how are you?
Hey, what's on your mind tonight?
So the power system in Ukraine is very unstable right now. Like for the last couple of days, we have these schedules for power outages. Like, for example, today we had to have 4 hours of electricity, then 4 hours off, then for the whole day. And at 4 o'clock, they turned it off on the schedule, and they didn't turn it back on the 8th. And I went back to the internet to check if I saw it correct, and they replaced that information with the renewed schedule, which says that from 4 o'clock, we don't have electricity and until further notice. So, and I thought, great, because I actually work online and I depend on the electricity. Like, I have my laptop, it could last me for like 4 hours. I can share Wi-Fi from my mobile data, but, still, after 4 hours, I just lose time. I can't work.
Right. Yeah, that's crippling. And it's cold there too, right? I mean, it's in the. You guys probably go by Celsius there, but in the Fahrenheit, it's below freezing right now. It's 28 degrees.
A little bit over, it's like 1 Celsius, and
it's cold.
I don't know Fahrenheit. Sorry.
Are you guys able to get generators or solar panels or anything like that to keep working?
Actually, generators, they are, I guess, expensive. Some restaurants, they get generators.
Well, she's in an apartment complex, right? You're not in a home. You're in an apartment.
Yeah, I'm in an apartment.
You can't just, you can't just hook up a generator outside an apartment very easily, right? Like, that's not easy at all.
I think they have building generators for like whole buildings.
They could have whole building-sized generators,
but I don't know if they're like. I don't know if that's something they're deploying in Ukraine, or if they're even available, or if it's just going to be too expensive because there's a war going on.
Right? Because then you've got people in the building using.
The problem though is the economic damage that's going to cause if you don't do that. It would seem to me that it would make financial sense to throw the money at the generator so that your economy can continue going. Otherwise, you're going to go bankrupt.
Maybe, but as far as if you're in a private apartment building and you're the landlord, you're going to deal with somebody's going to use a lot of power, and other people may not be using as much, and then the apartments that are really cranking on the power. How do you really determine that when you're dealing with a generator?
You might be able to do like a room or an apartment where people could go for power during so that it wasn't
a charging station or something. Like that.
Do they have something like that there where you are in your apartment?
Yeah, not in my town because it's a little town, but in big cities which are more destroyed than this one, they do have these. I don't know how they work, but I've heard that on the news, so they do build it.
And is the alleged reason for the power issues that are happening there because the Russians are supposedly bombing power supply centers, or like what is the allegation?
Yeah, like what they say on the news is Russia bombs the points of the production of electricity, the producing, and some key points. Like they say they destroyed like 50% of the power system in Ukraine.
Do you believe the mainstream media? By the way, the Western media is trying to report that Ukraine is winning versus Russia. Do you believe that's true?
Well, I don't know, because on the front line, I see on the news that they are actually setting some towns free, and recently they've Ukrainian warriors entered the big city of Kherson, and so I'm not sure how about the winning, because Russia has these bombs, and it could destroy like that, not only on the front line. But I don't know what to believe in. Like that government saying that they lied before a lot, and now I have trust.
Yeah,
right.
Them.
It's interesting because there's propaganda on both sides, which is kind of interesting, and it's kind of interesting, especially I'm obviously not in that situation, but if I was in that situation, I would be wondering like, okay, well, what is my government lying to me about versus the propaganda on the other side, right?
Yeah,
indeed.
Hey, our government says to prepare for the worst. That's what they say, literally.
What do you think about the vote that happened in Donetsk and Luhansk and the other southeastern areas in Ukraine, where they voted ostensibly to join Russia? Obviously, there weren't a lot of countries in the world that recognized that vote. But do you think that if that vote were to be done under the oversight of the UN, do you think those people still would have voted to join Russia? Do you think that was legitimate?
No, I don't think it was legitimate. I think that these were the people who Russia set there to propagandize, and you also should know that lots of people in Ukraine are poor and stupid, and they have like lots of credits. So I think maybe some people in Russia, they pay to vote for that, or they there's no country, no credit, you don't have to pay, just go vote. You're going to be with us, with Russia. Maybe they do that, I don't know. But I don't believe it was legit. I don't believe that even more than 50% of people could vote for Russia. It was definitely less than 50, maybe even 30. But some people, they don't want to be with Russia. You should know that. But closer to Russia.
Are there a lot of ethnic Russians still living in Ukraine from the days of the USSR?
Yes, I think, and the closer to Russia, the more the percentage is. And many people are old, and they remember USSR, and that these were the days of their youth, and that's why they maybe want to believe that someday again it's going to be so great country, that's what they had. It was a lot of propaganda in USSR.
Yeah, I'm curious. Are you, if let's say there was a fair election, right, in those regions that Russia has taken control of, do you think the people would have voted to join Russia, or
she said no? I already asked that question.
No, okay.
Yeah. Galina, anything else you want to share tonight?
So about this city of Kherson that Ukrainian warriors are entering right now, they entered, there was this voting. People voted in this region. But now Ukraine is taking it back, and people living there, they are actually happy that Ukrainians came back. Maybe that's only what they show on the media, but there are these people there.
Well, isn't it criminal to speak out against, or I guess, in favor of Russia? I believe people were being arrested, if I'm not mistaken.
The Ukrainian government, before the vote happened, told the people of those areas that if they voted, if they participated in that election, they would be imprisoned.
I've never heard of that.
Well, they probably didn't report it on your local media, but supposedly that's what's happening. But again, we don't know what's true. As you said, you never really know what to believe out there. Galina, thanks for the call tonight. I appreciate hearing from you. Gene is on the line in Kentucky. Gene, go ahead.
Yes, I miss Mark. Y'all sparring back and forth. I know he's on there once in a while. Has he ever been back to the studio?
Yeah, he comes back every now and then. We're expecting him back here. He's going to come back before my trial in the next couple of weeks. We'll probably see him on the air again right around that time. I know you're calling about something tonight, Gene. If you want, just stand by. We're going to come back to you, okay?
Okay,
all right, more with Gene here in just a moment. And yeah, we all miss Mark, and hopefully he's doing well in wherever it is he is, down in Honduras or Florida or something like that. He travels around quite a bit. But hopefully we'll be hearing from him sooner rather than later. The number is 603-283-6160. That's 603-283-6160. We got a full hour to go. Plenty of time for you if you want to join us here. And then the EU, are they going to be cracking down on privacy coins? We'll find out coming up. Gold and silver. You can own the most stable assets in recorded history with BullionMax.com. Buy direct from BullionMax.com without talking to a salesperson, and your precious metals shipped fully insured directly to your home. Free Talk Live can get you their silver starter kit at employee pricing. Just go to BullionMax.com/FTL. It includes 5 ounces of the most desirable silver products plus a free gold bag. This offer is limited to 1 per household, so get yours now. Go to BullionMax.com/FTL. So you've signed the Shire Society Declaration and are planning your move to New Hampshire to be around more liberty-oriented people. Next, sign up for the Shire Society Forum at forum.shiresociety.com. There are a bunch of people there who are already in the Shire, and they want to meet you. If you're already in the Shire physically, you should also come by the forums. Remember, not everyone uses Facebook. New people are signing up for the Shire Society Forum every month, so drop in and say hello at forum.shiresociety.com. The new 4th edition of Healing Our World, The Compassion of Libertarianism, will take your understanding of liberty to a deeper level and has over 1,300 updated references, new cartoons, and a foreword by Dr. Ron Paul. With discounts for multiple book purchases, the 4th edition of Healing Our World is a great gift for the liberals, pragmatists, environmentalists, and Christians in your life who think libertarianism is cold-hearted. Get yours today at healing.freetalklive.com and use promo code FTL for a $5 discount. Tired of cancel culture? Sick of mega tech corporations holding an axe over your head? Join the LRN.FM Matrix chat server. It's self-hosted, so no one else can tell us what to do or say. Don't like the existing channels? You can make your own. You can even connect into some of our channels from other Matrix servers. It's federated. For the full LRN.FM Matrix experience, though, you should join our server via the step-by-step instructions at chat.lrn.fm. Chat.lrn.fm.
You're listening to the live edition of Free Talk Live. Hour number 3 is next after the news here on the Liberty Radio Network at LRN.FM.
From Feature Story News in Washington, I'm Simon Marks. U.S. Attorney General Merrick Garland has appointed a special prosecutor to head up 2 criminal probes into former President Donald Trump. Jack Smith, a former war crimes prosecutor, will now lead the investigations into whether Donald Trump or members of his inner circle broke the law ahead of the January 6th riots last year on Capitol Hill, or with regard to the former president's handling of classified documents recovered from his Mar-a-Lago estate. The news was announced by the Attorney General.
Based on recent developments, including the former president's announcement that he is a candidate for president in the next election, and the sitting president's stated intention to be a candidate as well, I have concluded that it is in the public interest to appoint a special counsel. Mr. Smith will begin his work as special counsel immediately.
Reacting, former President Trump said the move again revealed the politicization of the Department of Justice and indicated that he will not cooperate with Mr. Smith. In other news, as many as 1,200 remaining employees of Twitter have reportedly resigned rather than commit to new so-called hardcore working conditions imposed by owner Elon Musk. With more from FSN's bureau in Silicon Valley, Ira Spitzer.
The social media platform had about 2,900 employees before a deadline on Thursday to either commit to Musk's demands to work long hours and be hardcore or leave with 3-month severance. The situation prompted fears that the site would cease to function properly without people to run it. Musk immediately laid off half of Twitter's staff earlier this month after purchasing the company for $44 billion and taking it private.
Swedish investigators say they have found traces of explosives at the site of undersea blasts which hit the Nord Stream 1 and 2 pipelines in September. FSN's Giles Gibson reports from the Estonian capital, Tallinn.
Well, we've heard from Dmitry Peskov, who is the spokesperson for the Russian President Vladimir Putin, saying that they want to see a full assessment of the damage before there's any sort of discussion about repairs in the future. Also saying the Kremlin that it's going to be very important to establish who was responsible. Now, the Russian government has previously actually pointed the finger at the British Royal Navy, accusing them of being involved. The British government categorically denied that.
The publisher of the Washington Post newspaper is slamming the Biden administration after the State Department said Saudi Arabia's Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman is covered by immunity and cannot face a lawsuit over the killing of Saudi-American journalist Jamal Khashoggi. In a statement, Fred Ryan said the US government is granting a license to kill to the Crown Prince. From bureaus worldwide, this is FSN. With FSN Spotlight, I'm Simon Marks, looking in more detail today at the decision by several supermarkets across the UK to ration the number of eggs individual customers are permitted to buy. The move comes as the largest outbreak ever of bird flu affects Britain, with thousands of chickens being culled as a precautionary measure. Unseasonably hot temperatures over the summer and supply chain difficulties caused by the war in Ukraine have also contributed to a 35% rise in the average price of a dozen eggs. Andrew Meredith is editor of Britain's Farmers Weekly.
The overriding factor from the farmer's perspective is just a simple failure since the spring to heed the warnings of the industry and pass on some of those increased costs of production to the consumer. We've seen prices go up on the shelves, but the money just hasn't filtered back to the farmers and the farm gate price. Unfortunately, producers are losing about 10 pence a dozen on average now.
Some supermarkets are preventing customers from buying more than 2 boxes of eggs at a time, and retailers are trying to seek alternative sources of supply in Italy and other parts of Europe. But egg farmers say the situation is expected to worsen, with the National Farmers Union arguing the difficulties are the most serious situation for food production in the UK since the end of the Second World War. The main news again, US Attorney General Merrick Garland is appointing a special prosecutor to head up 2 criminal probes into former President Donald Trump. Hundreds of Twitter employees have reportedly resigned rather than commit to new so-called hardcore working conditions imposed by Elon Musk. And Swedish investigators say they have found traces of explosives at the site of undersea blasts that hit the Nord Stream 1 and 2 pipelines in September. And that is the latest feature story news. Simon Marks reporting.
Retail giant CVS is gearing up for floods of customers seeking the perfect meaningless piece of crap for their office gift swap. The company is making no secret that when it comes to wasting the obligatory $20 on a useless electronic dartboard or pretzel maker for someone you couldn't care less about, CVS is your best option.
Our incredible selection of worthless shit is just the thing that nobody wants. We guarantee you'll find nothing personal or unique in our store.
The company is offering massive discounts on otherwise unsellable items for holiday parties you don't even want to go to, like the $12 decorative lantern, which is expected to be a big hit with customers who grab the first thing they see when they walk in the store.
I really wanted to get something that said, I don't care about any of you people and I didn't put any effort into this.
CVS also has Hanukkah gifts for coworkers who you think might be Jewish, like candles and those little plastic net bags full of chocolate money.
This is the Onion News Network.
Free Talk Live.
It is Free Talk Live. Kicking off the third hour of the program. Phones open if you want to join us here. The number is 603-283-6160. That's 603-283-6160. We've been talking a little bit about the European Union and them going to be cracking down on social media. Maybe that will eventually target independent operators like Mastodon. Doesn't look like it's going to happen right out the gate, But you know how it is with government programs. Once you create a new government program, they always expand. They always are interpreted by the bureaucrats to be a more effective, to affect more things than they were originally intended to. So you always have what the politicians write down on paper. That's one thing, the intentions of the politicians, and then the intentions of the bureaucrats are always to take that and make it as expansive as it possibly can. So they always have the excuse to make their bureaucracy larger, hire more bureaucrats, and do more enforcements. Here in the studio tonight, by the way, it's Ian.
And Chris.
And joining us remotely,
nobody.
Of course, you can join us online anytime over at freetalklive.com. We're going back to the phones here. Gene is on the line in Kentucky. Gene, what was on your mind tonight?
Yes, like I said, I miss Mark, and you commented on that. My favorite callers are Sarah, of course, and then David from New Mexico. David, you need to call him more. I enjoy hearing you. I heard.
Well, you can only call so often. I mean, there's a one call per night rule.
I heard him lately. I heard him on the national syndicated radio. It was either Ground Zero or
okay.
I don't know what it was, but I enjoyed it.
Yeah, some of these callers make the rounds. Yeah, I wonder if Sarah has been calling other shows recently. In fact, she's on the line. You want to talk to Sarah? I've got her on the line.
No.
Oh, she's not really your favorite then.
Little calls. No, yes, she is, but I just don't. I want to. Okay.
You don't want to meet your heroes, is what you're saying.
No, she's not my hero. I just enjoy listening to them. I smile, and that's what I'll do all day is listen. Of course, I'm in and out the house doing things. But I'm saying I'm not a TV watcher.
Good.
If I can't stand TV.
Excellent.
So I'm nothing but a talk radio listener.
Well, you've got good taste. Thank you for listening to Free Talk Live, Gene. Was there any issue that you wanted to talk about tonight, or
like
just
2009 or 2010? I've been listening to y'all quite a while.
Wow,
that's
awesome.
Now, the gentleman that does the Victimless Crime Spree, how come
Derek
he's
J.
never a co-host?
Oh, unfortunately, the federal government, as you probably know since you've been listening for a while, raided our studio last year in March of 2021.
Yeah.
And at that time, Derek J. and his partner, Steven, the guys from AnyPay, they decided to go visit and touring around different parts of the world. I've heard they are currently in Europe. In the Pyrenees, I believe. Andorra was the last I heard, but I don't know for sure. I have not, unfortunately, had the pleasure of speaking with Derek in some time due to the various different
restrictions. I haven't heard him for a long time, long before that.
Yeah, we've had a lot of. Well, no, it wasn't that long before that. I mean, they would come on as guest hosts from time to time. Prior to the last 2 years, but due to the federal prosecution and my bail conditions, I've been unable to communicate effectively with those guys, and it really it hurts me because I really love those guys and I miss them a lot.
Another thing I enjoy listening to Nikki and Bonnie and all the other girls is on there.
Well, good, and thank you, Gene, for the kind words tonight. I really do appreciate your call. Thank you.
Okay.
All right. So, I mean, I appreciate the accolades, but I would rather talk about some, issues and things that are, actually happening. So, but thank you, Gene. I do appreciate the
it's, though, I do feel like it's a good change once in a while to hear.
Yeah, but I don't want to hear it a lot, right? Like,
I'm not saying a lot, but
if everybody starts calling in to tell us who their favorite hosts are and how they like listening, okay, great, thanks.
You're right.
Let's keep it to the issues here. Let's go to Major Payne. You're on Free Talk Live.
Once in a while, it's nice to have comments about us that aren't "you're an idiot."
Yeah, well, that's true, and it's nice to hear from somebody that has been listening for over a decade of their life. That's pretty impressive. So I don't mean to minimize it, but let's continue here. Major Payne, you're on Free Talk Live.
Yeah, the Den of Idiots. I think I'm talking to Sheep Talk Jive, right?
Okay, funny.
Oh, come on now. That was.
What else you got?
Well, we got all kinds of idiocy out here. I mean, I called in on what nobody brought in. This guy went all off postal on you about the FX bank boy there, Bankman, being the number 2 contributor to the Democratic Party and all this pollution that went on during the elections here.
Yeah, number 2 after George Soros.
Yeah, now I come to find out that it's getting recycled through Ukraine and back to the Democratic Party through Bankman. I mean, jumping. Jiminy, how deep does the swamp gotta be?
Good question.
Yeah, it's really when you get into it, it runs deep, and I've only seen, I'm sure that we've only seen the tip of the iceberg, but these people were funding COVID studies. They were doing all kinds of political maneuvering.
I want to know what people thought they were getting when they voted for government in the first place. It's always what government's about. It's about redistribution of the funds. It's about redistribution of your money.
Well, most people, I think, expect to be net gainers from that, which, if you do the math, doesn't make sense because most people can't possibly be net gainers.
Well, no, the government's the most ineffective way to redistribute money. They take 30% at a minimum, if not
Probably
way more than
60%.
that. Well, that's just to manage it, and then when they spend it, you lose another 80%, right? So,
yeah,
this is like the logic of a gambler. You're walking into this grand casino, and you think it was built on losers?
Nope. Well, yeah.
Wake up. Oh, man. Oh, I got one thing to tell you.
Okay.
This is going to drive Jerome bug nutty. Trump having announced his candidacy and you telling him that he's got to call in on varying subjects. Oh, man, he's chewing glass right now.
Telling him what?
That you told him that he had to call on varying subjects. He couldn't keep beating the same horse.
Oh, Jerome? I didn't tell Jerome that, but
now Trump has announced his candidacy. You know this. He's beside himself. He wants
no. I mean, that's a general rule for Free Talk Live, but Jerome is he's not the same problem that Sarah is. Like she'll call out the exact same thing multiple nights in a row, and that rule is definitely applicable in general, but I don't think Jerome would, just him complaining about Trump doing one thing and then Trump doing something else usually brings up more than one issue. So personally, I don't have any issues with Jerome at this time, although that said, I wasn't on this past weekend, so I don't know what he was going on about. But if you do want Jerome to hear your calls, you probably should call on the weekend. I don't think he listens on weeknights. But Major, thanks for the call tonight. I appreciate it. And speaking of Sarah, here she is in New Mexico. You're on Free Talk Live.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
Huh? Was that a sentence?
I really want to talk about my Rapid Ride here, 790. Here, I really enjoy it. Since I put it on, they put it on. And
what?
It goes from noon. The Rapid Ride, 790.
Is that a radio station or a bus stop? I'm not sure what you're saying.
It's a bus route, but it's only been around for 7 years, and it took me a while to
Why is it called
out
790? Is that the road that it runs on? Or is that just the number of
I thought it was a sales pitch for a product.
The bus line.
No, it's the number of the bus line.
Uh-huh.
But I finally got that.
So you called our show tonight to give our listeners a review of a city bus line?
It's 10-15 miles, but you get there in 20 minutes, and it goes over the freeway.
And they don't charge you anything for it?
That's correct. It's free for right now, and they're going to extend it. We're going to have free ride until next June, until they figure out what to do.
So isn't that awesome? The taxpayers are paying to send derelicts around all the town there in Albuquerque.
Who do you think is paying for it if it's free?
Well, all the people that ride the bus, a lot of them, they work. I see a lot of them.
She got it. Yep, it's the productive people, the people that are actually out there working. Thank you for the call tonight, Sarah. The number here is 603-283-6160. That's 603-283-6160. You can bring up whatever is on your mind. Coming up, the European Union targeting privacy coins. We'll talk about what those are, why they're important, and why the government would really love to stop them. But can they? What exactly are they planning to do? This is Free Talk Live.
Did you or someone you love work, live, or serve at Camp Lejeune between 1953 and 1988? If you or someone you know lived, served, or worked at Camp Lejeune between 1953 and 1988 and has cancer, Parkinson's disease, or another serious health issue, they are entitled to compensation. To see if they are eligible, they need to call Liberty Legal. Contaminants in the drinking water have led to these serious diseases, and legislation is now available for veterans and family members who may qualify for financial help from the government. There may be a time deadline, so don't wait. Call 888-918-1037. Anyone that has lived, worked, or served at Camp Lejeune from 1953 to 1988 and has had cancer, Parkinson's disease, or another serious health issue, the money is already set aside. 888-918-1037. 888-918-1037.
Are you tired of governments murdering people around the world? Stop using their money. There is an alternative. Bitcoin is a stateless, free market, non-political currency. Bitcoin cannot be inflated or controlled by any government. By using their money, you are helping the state. Stop doing it. You have an incredible alternative available now. Learn it, use it, spread it. Get started with Bitcoin at Bitcoin.com. That's Bitcoin.com.
If you want to know the latest about Free Talk Live before we go on the air, all you need to decide is how you want it delivered. It's your choice. Visit news.freetalklive.com to receive our usually weekly news updates by email. Plus, we have a Twitter account at twitter.freetalklive.com, and you can follow us on the decentralized Mastodon platform at toot.freetalklive.com. So please follow us at toot.freetalklive.com and sign up for our emails at news.freetalklive.com. On Free Talk Live, we're bringing people to the ideas of liberty every day. From wrestling superstars like Glenn Jacobs.
You guys really are having an impact, I believe. Like I said, a lot of where I am now is due to listening to Free Talk Live. You changed my mind on some very important issues years ago.
To random people tuning in on the radio.
I was kind of stuck in the left-right paradigm. I heard your show by chance on a Saturday night. From there, I went on, joined the Free State Project, and become an amplifier. So, I mean, that's really the reason why I amp is because I know that if it wasn't for you guys being on as many stations as you are, I never would have found the ideas of liberty.
You can help more people hear the message of liberty by joining Free Talk Live's AMPS program on Patreon for as little as $5 a month. And you'll get access to special perks. Visit amps.freetalklive.com, amps.freetalklive.com. What if you want to hear the latest episode of Free Talk Live, but all you have is your phone, you forgot to download our archive, and you have no data connection? You can call our Listen line at 641-793-0191. That's a long-distance number, so you may incur charges. If not, listen as long as you want. 641-793-0191. The Free Talk Live Listen line, 641-793-0191.
Are you tired of your taxes funding endless occupations around the world? Antiwar.com is run by people who understand that wars abroad become wars at home, wars on our freedoms. Antiwar.com is dedicated to bringing you the latest in news, views, interviews, and reviews from the top movers and shakers in the anti-occupation movement. Antiwar.com has it all, from thorough foreign policy analysis to interviews with whistleblowers who used to run the military-industrial complex. Anti-war, pro-free market. That's antiwar.com.
Don't miss a moment of Free Talk Live. Get our archives daily via our podcast at feeds.freetalklive.com.
It is Free Talk Live. Ian, Chris, and nobody here. The number is 603-283-6160. And by the way, the Bullion Max Silver Starter Kit is back in stock. It had sold out for a few days. They got it back. It is the 5 ounces of the most desirable silver products, plus they're throwing in a free gold back. So we've talked a lot about the gold backs over the last couple of years here on Free Talk Live. We're big fans of it. I think I can speak for all of the hosts of the show. I don't think we have a single person who is not a huge fan of the gold back. And it's one thing to hear about. It's another thing to see a photo on the internet. It's a whole other thing to actually have one in your hands, to be able to see what it really is like, to appreciate the way it catches the light in the room, and it's just a gorgeous product. And you get one of them when you order the Silver Starter Kit, which you can get, by the way, at employee pricing, because they really want to encourage people to get into gold and silver over at bullionmax.com/FTL. That's where you can get yours. There's a limit of 1 per household. So get yours now, and you can join some of the savvy investors out there who are investing in the most stable assets in recorded history. You don't have to talk to a salesperson, and your precious metal ship fully insured directly to your home. Just go to bullionmax.com/FTL and get your silver starter kit with a free gold bag. As we continue here, Chris, you were telling us about some of the latest EU proposals. There's a Digital Services Act, as they call it, which at minimum is probably going to do a lot more than this, but they're targeting the social media sites out there for regulation, and how that's going to affect smaller sites still remains to be seen. Maybe not right away, but perhaps down the road. And of course, we know they're also very interested in going after cryptocurrencies, specifically what they call privacy coins. What's the news there?
Anything to crack down on privacy and security, the EU will definitely target it.
And financial freedom, for that matter.
So, we got a story from, CryptoBriefing.com, EU moving to ban privacy coins report. So, this is interesting because it's based on a leaked document, apparently. So, the European Union is said to be mulling a ban on privacy coins, including Monero, Zcash, and Dash. Dash is the weird one in there. I don't usually think of Dash as a privacy coin, but I guess there's some mixing going on in there, I think. So
there is an option with Dash to use a mixing service when you send it. I don't think that's a particular, like you say, that is not really known for any serious level of privacy, but it is it's sort of one of the first cracks at a privacy coin from way back when. Like, this was pre-Monero times, right? This was, for 2013 or whenever it was, Dash was a privacy coin. Nowadays, not so much.
This kind of makes, what Dash always reminded me of? The way it was always described as a mixing type of thing, and I always think, okay, money laundering, right? When I think Monero, I don't think money laundering. I just think it's
good privacy.
Right. Built in from the beginning, as opposed to something that we're trying to hide stuff, but it's not really. You can still trace it and eventually get to its. So EU legislators are working on an anti-money laundering policy proposal for prohibiting banks and crypto providers from interacting with privacy coins. All right, so maybe they're not going to ban them outright, but it's going to make it very difficult for people to spend them with merchants, because merchants are going to be relying on some. They can presumably. Well, I'm assuming they can, but they would have to run their own infrastructure. As opposed to being able to use a third-party service provider.
Right. Oh man.
According to an anonymous,
at least a third-party service provider based in the EU. If they're using something based outside of the EU, maybe that's a way around this. But still,
I suspect the EU will claim jurisdiction if you accept, clients that are in the EU. But I don't know. According to an anonymous EU diplomat who reportedly revealed the plans to CoinDesk, if enacted, the policy would effectively blacklist a host of popular cryptocurrencies, including Monero, Zcash, and Dash. In March, the European Parliament forwarded legislation to impede transactions between exchanges and unhosted wallets. Interesting. Unhosted. So that would mean wallets that are right. I kind of remember this. Like, that
would be a personal wallet where you control the keys. I
think it's a situation. What they tried to do is they tried to say, if you have an exchange, the exchange isn't allowed to send to wallets that are not hosted, so somebody's personal wallet, as opposed to
that is really bad.
It was. I remember it being really bad legislation. The Parliament now seems prepared to escalate restrictions against anonymity in crypto. In a draft of the legislative proposal dated November 9th, initially reported by CoinDesk, the body said credit institutions, financial institutions, and crypto asset service providers shall be prohibited from keeping anonymity enhancing coins. So they won't even allow them to have the coins. The draft is believed to have been drafted by CSEC officials and has since been shared among its 26 member states.
Well, it's already something that's been happening here in the United States to some extent. It was, 3 years ago, I think, that Bittrex, and you may remember this, nobody, because I know that at one time you had a Bittrex account. But Bittrex announced that they were going to ban all privacy coins from their platform, and there never even was any kind of legislation in the United States.
No, it was all government bureaucrat manipulation.
We think it was pressure.
Threats.
I think it was pressure. Yeah. They came to them and they said, "Look, you better do this, or else."
And this seems to be a trend in the United States of how I don't know. I'm trying to think what specific the banking department of the United States, something like that, is basically, I don't know, like oppressing, I guess. I don't know if that's the best choice of words, but oppressing institutions that want to do stuff with cryptocurrency, or they are just dealing with certain clientele.
Yeah, you can't get. I remember Binance.us. The last time I was on that platform, they didn't have Monero there, and I think the only domestic, if I recall correctly, I mean, I've been through a lot of exchanges over the years. Right. The only domestic one I remember that actually had Monero was Kraken.
Really?
That was the only one. Now, I don't know. Nobody, have you seen it popping up anywhere else?
I have not.
Yeah. It's a hard one to get a hold of from domestic exchanges. You have to buy Bitcoin and then move the Bitcoin to some other place to buy the Monero on an international exchange.
Yeah, I mean, this reminds me very much of how the government, the U.S. government, sent out a letter to all banks saying you can't deal with anybody who's worked in the sex industry.
Mm-hmm.
It's another perfect example. There's no law that prohibits it because I'm talking about the legal sex industry, right?
Right.
But banks, all of the financial institutions cut off anybody, even if they're not currently working in the sex industry. If they worked in the sex industry 20 years ago, they had their bank accounts cut off.
Crazy.
Yeah, and you think there'd have to be some sort of law passed, but nope. They're just doing
they're just pressuring people.
Yeah, they're just pressuring banks through threatening to suspend licenses and things of that nature, even though there's no basis for them actually cutting off, the licenses.
Right. It's hard enough to even find a bank who doesn't have a problem with cryptocurrency, because most of them do.
Because they've already been threatened.
Right. And then there are some that they'll allow it, but they put you through a ton of know your customer requirements, and maybe you'll get through, maybe you won't. And then, eventually you try to transfer funds to a cryptocurrency exchange, and then you discover that you can't even buy the cryptocurrencies that you want there. So they're just trying to put as many hoops in the way as possible for people to get a hold of these privacy coins. Now, this is another proposed law, right, Chris?
Yeah, it's proposed. It hasn't passed yet.
There's more coming up here. You can join the show. The number is 603-283-6160. If you want to weigh in, you can join us here on Free Talk Live. Plus, I got a story about German industry. It's in trouble.
Did you or someone you love work, live, or serve at Camp Lejeune between 1953 and 1988? If you or someone you know lived, served, or worked at Camp Lejeune between 1953 and 1988 and has cancer, Parkinson's disease, or another serious health issue, they are entitled to compensation. To see if they are eligible, they need to call Liberty Legal. Contaminants in the drinking water have led to these serious diseases, and legislation is now available for veterans and family members who may qualify for financial help from the government. There may be a time deadline, so don't wait. Call 888-918-1037. Anyone that has lived, worked, or served at Camp Lejeune from 1953 to 1988 and has had cancer, Parkinson's disease, or another serious health issue, the money is already set aside. 888-918-1037. 888-918-1037.
From Feature Story News in Washington, I'm Simon Marks. U.S. Attorney General Merrick Garland has appointed a special prosecutor to head up 2 criminal probes into former President Donald Trump. Jack Smith, a former war crimes prosecutor, will now lead the investigations into whether Donald Trump or members of his inner circle broke the law ahead of the January 6th riots last year on Capitol Hill, or with regard to the former president's handling of classified documents recovered from his Mar-a-Lago estate. The news was announced by the Attorney General.
Based on recent developments, including the former president's announcement that he is a candidate for president in the next election, and the sitting president's stated intention to be a candidate as well, I have concluded that it is in the public interest to appoint a special counsel. Mr. Smith will begin his work as special counsel immediately.
Reacting, former President Trump said the move again revealed the politicization of the Department of Justice and indicated that he will not cooperate with Mr. Smith. In other news, as many as 1,200 remaining employees of Twitter have reportedly resigned rather than commit to new so-called hardcore working conditions imposed by owner Elon Musk. With more from FSN's bureau in Silicon Valley, Ira Spitzer.
The social media platform had about 2,900 employees before a deadline on Thursday to either commit to Musk's demands to work long hours and be hardcore or leave with 3-month severance. The situation prompted fears that the site would cease to function properly without people to run it. Musk immediately laid off half of Twitter's staff earlier this month after purchasing the company for $44 billion and taking it private.
Swedish investigators say they have found traces of explosives at the site of undersea blasts which hit the Nord Stream 1 and 2 pipelines in September. FSN's Giles Gibson reports from the Estonian capital, Tallinn.
Well, we've heard from Dmitry Peskov, who is the spokesperson for the Russian President Vladimir Putin, saying that they want to see a full assessment of the damage before there's any sort of discussion about repairs in the future. Also saying the Kremlin that it's going to be very important to establish who was responsible. Now, the Russian government has previously actually pointed the finger at the British Royal Navy, accusing them of being involved. The British government categorically denied that.
The publisher of the Washington Post newspaper is slamming the Biden administration after the State Department said Saudi Arabia's Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman is covered by immunity and cannot face a lawsuit over the killing of Saudi-American journalist Jamal Khashoggi. In a statement, Fred Ryan said the U.S. government is granting a license to kill to the Crown Prince. From bureaus worldwide, this is FSN.
We're still not sure why you'd want to watch, but our video feed is streaming nightly for free at cam.freetalklive.com.
Yep, it is Free Talk Live, and you can join the show here, bring up whatever you want to talk about. The number is 603-283-6160. That's 603-283-6160. The European Union possibly going to be going after privacy coins because, you know, Bitcoin is a threat. Bitcoin Cash, Dash, all these cryptocurrencies are a threat to the status quo in that they do allow for the individual to have control over their own finances for the first time ever, allowing you to send value from one point to another, one person to another, anywhere in the world without having to ask permission, cutting out the middleman, as we discussed earlier. That is all true, and they're wonderful for that. And Satoshi Nakamoto, whoever he or she or that person is, thank goodness for their hard work and what they created. But the one thing Satoshi was missing when Bitcoin was released was privacy. Because the downside of Bitcoin is it is, of course, completely public. Every transaction on the Bitcoin network, on the blockchain, has been there and is visible from the very beginning. And there's some very sophisticated software out there that can easily trace Bitcoin from one point to another. But then somebody came up with Monero. I think it was like 2014 or 2015, somewhere in that range. Monero came out. It's not known who that person was. Maybe it was Satoshi Nakamoto operating under a different name. That person has never been revealed either. But Monero solves the privacy issue. So it does all of the things that Bitcoin does, meaning that it cuts out the middleman, allows you to send value from anywhere to anywhere, but doesn't have a trail attached to it.
You know, it's kind of funny that the governments want to ban effectively what amounts to cash, except on the internet.
Well, yeah, they don't get to inflate it.
Well,
they don't have the power.
Sure, yeah.
It takes that out of their hands too.
It is certainly the one thing that distinguishes, cryptocurrency from fiat currency.
It's one of them. Yeah,
it's the inflation. Yeah.
It's a major factor.
It's a major one.
Plus, crypto is also more divisible, right? Because you can go down to 8 decimal points on Bitcoin and only 2 decimal points on the dollar or the euro, right?
The other thing it does is it undermines the bank's profits, right? Because every time you do any kind of transaction with a credit card or with your bank, they're making a little bit of money off of you, right? And a little bit's actually not just a little bit; it's actually a lot.
It
of
adds
money.
up with them.
It's just most people don't see it because it's not a fee that's charged in most cases, on the bottom of your receipt or anything like that. It's just built into the price. They're increasing the price of the product when they sell you, when a merchant sells you that good, to include the cost of that transaction because you use that debit card or that credit card or that wire or the wire transfers. You're actually probably going to pay part of that yourself, but.
The fact that these governments of the world are so afraid of privacy coins is a real check mark in their favor. To me, when I saw it, I first heard that Monero was being accepted by darknet marketplaces. That was the first big check mark in Monero's corner for me. It was like, oh, okay. That, to me, is a huge endorsement. And now the fact that the EU wants to ban it, that's a huge endorsement.
I'm a little skeptical that the reason they want to ban it really has to do with anything to do with money laundering. And the reason for this is because...
No, it has to do with you being able to obscure the value that you have from their prying eyes.
It's not even that, because ultimately money laundering, who's the biggest money launderers? It's the banks. The banks, cryptocurrency, the size of the market for cryptocurrency doesn't enable large-scale money laundering. It's just not a big enough market. And it's the banks that are actually facilitating the majority of the money laundering currently.
That's true, and they just get a smack on the hand if they get caught.
Right.
They get a fine.
Right.
That's it.
So where is this, hatred coming from? It's not money laundering. That's just the guys, it's what they're using as the excuse.
They're afraid. It's not so much hatred as it is fear. The state fears people being able to protect their finances. That's why they're going after privacy coins. They don't want you to have privacy. They don't want you to have financial privacy because they want to be the panopticon. They want total domination over everything financial, and that's why they have control over the banks, and that's why they have control over the credit card companies, and that's why they want to come out with the CBDC, the central bank digital currencies, because they want to know at any given moment how much value you have and where you're spending it. They want to know all about that so they can stop you from spending it on the things they don't like you said, like with sex products or pornography or whatever other things that fall out of political favor.
Yeah, or drugs, weed, or there's all sorts of other types of products that might be taboo that they want to control, or what political campaigns you can donate to. This is where that's heading, right? They've already used bank accounts to stop people from contributing to political I don't know if campaigns, but especially like during the truckers' protests as an example, they shut people's bank accounts down so they couldn't contribute to the protests.
And they tried going after Bitcoin during that too, and that's when you saw some of the truckers start to accept Monero. When Bitcoin was being restricted, they were telling the crypto exchanges in Canada that they weren't allowed to accept Bitcoin from certain Bitcoin addresses, which was crazy and it's like unprecedented. That's never happened in the so-called free Western world before. But nobody, what do you think about these privacy coins? Do you have any favorites out there?
I like Monero. I still have one issue with privacy coins, which is and it's kind of necessary to what they are, the concept of a blockchain that you can't look at. It's hard for me to wrap my head around how I know for sure that, for example, there aren't five times as much Monero in existence as they claim there to be.
That's a good point.
Well, wouldn't that still be knowable based on the source code and the algorithms?
Well, I don't know, because there's no way of knowing that the source code that the miners are running actually matches the source code released on the net. But I'm really not sure.
Pretty sure that's going to be built into the algorithm, and that wouldn't, in theory, be possible as long as the majority of the
don't the miners all have to be on the same software in order for it to work properly?
Not necessarily, but they would still have to comply with the same algorithms, generally speaking, I would think, because
you're saying there couldn't be two different.
It would certainly have to be compatible software.
You couldn't have, what you're saying is you couldn't have mining software A versus mining software B, where mining software A is mining 10 times as many Monero into existence.
The problem is if you did, if you made a fork, right, and it's the algorithm, and you change the algorithm, right, to mine 10 times as much, it wouldn't be compatible with, with the rest of the network. It would be rejected by the rest of the network. So I don't think that's an issue. But
I don't know that much about exactly how Monero works. So I'm not saying that I know there to be a problem. I'm saying I don't understand entirely how it works, and that makes me
it is one of the valid criticisms, I think, of the privacy coin like that, because you never really know how many there are at any given moment. Like you can read what they say, and that is, oh, well, there's only this many Monero per 10 minutes or per block or whatever it is, and you can, if you know how to do the programming, could presumably verify that. But even then, it would still be, you're still kind of taking a shot in the dark at how many of them have been mined so far, right? Like you can try to figure it out, but with most public blockchains, you can just go and look, and it's right there.
Yeah.
It's a little bit more obtuse.
It's
this.
Yeah, I think it's a little bit more obfuscated, but it's not necessarily impossible to figure out. It's just complicated.
Yes, indeed.
And complicated doesn't necessarily mean impossible to figure out, right?
Yeah, and so for that reason, some people don't want to hold their savings in Monero because they're not sure about it. But it is still an effective way to move funds from one person to another without anybody knowing about it. So to that end, kudos to the people, whoever they are, programming these wonderful privacy coins. There's some others out there. Pirate Coin has been getting some play.
Is that back in the press? Back in the news?
No, I haven't seen anything in the news about it, but it's getting play within the Freedom community, at least at PorcFest, from what I understand. Yeah, I heard they were at PorcFest sponsoring a booth or something like that.
They were.
Coins.
Was that? Did they have that this year, or was it only the prior year?
Maybe it was the previous year. I don't know. I've barely been at PorcFest for 2 years, thanks to the federal government.
I know.
But we got more coming up here in moments. We'll talk about the German industry because they are having a tough time with the energy crisis. More coming up. The Free State Project has reached its goal of 20,000 liberty lovers who've pledged to move to New Hampshire and get active to achieve liberty in our lifetime. Perhaps you're trying to figure out what part of New Hampshire should be your destination. If so, consider Keene. You'll find more than 150 reasons to move to Keene at move.freekeene.com. Keene is famous for its historic, publicity-generating activism, as well as being the liberty media capital of the world. It's home to freekeene.com, New Hampshire's destination for liberty activism, news, and opinion. For years, we've been compiling over 150 reasons to move to Keene at move.freekeene.com, where you'll learn about some of what's happening here and what makes Keene a great place to live. If you love liberty, you'll probably enjoy anywhere you end up in the Shire. But do your due diligence first. Please visit move.freekeene.com for the full list of over 150 reasons to move to Keene. That's move.freekeene.com.
I'm crazy about My Magic Mud. This is the most important oral care product created this millennium, and I'm not kidding. We all have different opinions on politics and issues, but we all have mouths. And I want yours to be as clean as possible, with teeth as bright as they were meant to be. I will never be without My Magic Mud. It's a little surprising, but man, does it work. If you only listen to one thing I say ever, go to mymagicmud.com and get 20% off with code FTL. mymagicmud.com, code FTL.
Tired of cancel culture? Sick of mega tech corporations holding an axe over your head? Join the LRN.FM Matrix chat server. It's self-hosted, so no one else can tell us what to do or say. Don't like the existing channels? You can make your own. You can even connect into some of our channels from other Matrix servers. It's federated. For the full LRN.FM Matrix experience, though, you should join our server via the step-by-step instructions at chat.lrn.fm. chat.lrn.fm.
You are supply, and lately there's lots of demand. I'm Holland Cook with Inflation Hacks. Before the pandemic, websites were offering to help you find a job. Back to the Future. The Help Wanted sign is everywhere. So this may be a good time to ask for a raise. The boss will be all ears if you've taken on extra duties while the shop is short-handed. Otherwise, test the waters. You will seem like quite the catch if you ask questions that demonstrate you've done your homework and if you seem eager to pitch in. And when it's time to talk turkey, let them bring it up and assume it's their opening bid grid. And this is when to ask about benefits, overtime, and other details. For instance, is there a place to park? How are you coping? Post your inflation hacks at andyoucanquoteme.com.
If you want to know the latest about Free Talk Live before we go on the air, all you need to decide is how you want it delivered. It's your choice. Visit news.freetalklive.com to receive our usually weekly news updates by email. Plus, we have a Twitter account at twitter.freetalklive.com, and you can follow us on the decentralized Mastodon platform at toot.freetalklive.com. So please follow us at toot.freetalklive.com and sign up for our emails at news.freetalklive.com.
There are basically two types of advertising: direct response and branding. Radio's great for direct response with its low cost to listener ratio, but audio can't be beat for branding, which is a longer term endeavor. You want to be the first thing that someone thinks of when they think about your product or service. If you have a local business that you want kept top of mind in your community, call the station. If you need national reach, Free Talk Live's got around 200 radio stations, millions of monthly listening sessions, can suit all budgets, and if we don't think we're right for you, we'll tell you. Email me, mark@freetalklive.com.
You can help spread the ideas of liberty with our Patreon for just $5 per month at amps.freetalklive.com.
It is Free Talk Live. Phones are open here in the remaining moments. We have enough time for you. If you want to join us right now, the number is 603-283-6160, whether you want to talk about the EU potentially cracking down on privacy coins or whatever is on your mind. Here tonight, you've got Ian.
And Chris.
And nobody.
Nobody's with us as well. Nobody, the programmer behind Cell 411. We mentioned it earlier. Since we've been talking software tonight, nobody, do you mind giving our listeners a sit rep or a status report on Cell 411? How's it going out there?
Well, it's going relatively well. Right now the next step is getting it into test, and I've been kind of stuck there for a little while. I've had other things going on, but that should be happening pretty shortly. And
2 weeks to release?
Huh?
And 2 weeks to release, right? That's always the answer to any developer question.
You say it's when it's done, not you never
yeah,
set a date. Right?
Yeah. I usually say RSN, real soon now.
So how do people test this thing? Should they get into the chat room, the Matrix chat, for instance? Is that the best place?
Yeah, you can get into the Matrix chat, which is also gated to Telegram.
Yep.
Or bridged to Telegram. And there will be
We've got links up, by the way, for those chat rooms. If you go to getcell411.com and you click on the menu, you'll find Support Matrix and Support Telegram. So if you're into software, you want to get your hands on the early versions of the new Cell 411, which for listeners that don't know what we're talking about, can you give the elevator pitch? What was Cell 411? What is Cell 411?
Cell 411 was and is a means of crowdsourcing emergency response. So if you have an emergency, you'll be in a number of groups called cells, with presumably people who are local to you most of the time. If you get pulled over or somebody tries to rob you or your house is on fire, you hit the panic button on your phone and notifications go out to people who are in cells with you, and along with your GPS position and what your issue is, and that gives them the opportunity to either preferably come and help, or if there's nobody close to you, at least call you on the phone, see what's going on, maybe coordinate help from a distance. And it's a I think it's a very, very useful system. I've used it in a number of different situations, and I've always had good results from it. what it's going to be, what it's becoming. The first issue is the first implementation of it was kind of naive in terms of security. Mm-hmm. So I've been cleaning the security up on it. I've been making it so that it can be self-hosted, because eventually I want people to be able to host their own cells on their own servers that I don't necessarily even know about. And I've removed. It was deeply Googled. It used a lot of Google software. I ripped all of that out, so you no longer need to have Play Store access.
You used to have Facebook stuff in there too, didn't it?
Yeah, it had Facebook, it had Twitter, it had it had a bunch of third-party stuff that I didn't necessarily know what it was doing or what information it was sending back or to whom, so I ripped it out.
Sounds like it's ready for the F-Droid App Store.
I believe it will go on that. I know I have
that's
run
like,
it.
That's like the standard
you gave me
for privacy and security.
F-Droid is?
Yeah.
Yeah, well, it's all open source apps, right?
Right. So basically, the only thing that gets into F-Droid is basically software where there's a complete set of source code for it, and other people can look at it, and there's nothing hidden basically.
Which is one of the big changes that Cell 411 made 2 years ago when the Shire Free Church acquired it and handed it over to you to develop. Nobody was the previous owner, the creator of Cell 411. He didn't understand the value, I don't think, of having it as an open source project. And that was the major first thing that we changed. Was we said we got to open this thing. We got to open this thing up, and that was your first major accomplishment. Nobody was you cleaned up the code and you opened it up, and that is now available for anybody to assist you with. So anybody that wants to jump on board here, whether it's just testing the app, and that's what you probably need more of than anything else. But if you're a programmer type, you can probably help out as well, especially if you have Apple programming abilities, iOS. I know you've been looking for that kind of
I'd love to
person.
have an Apple guy. If you're not a programmer and you want to become a programmer, I would certainly be interested in helping somebody get started by saying, okay, well, read up some on this language and we'll talk about it. And once you start having some skills that you can use, I can say, hey, well, look at this part of the source. It's ugly. See if you can clean it up and send me a new copy, and I'll critique it for you. So that's another possibility. Just on a side note, we should also pitch Beard Talk Live.
Oh, yeah. Beard Talk Live coming up tomorrow night at 10:30 Eastern Time. After Free Talk Live radio show ends, Nobody, and a couple other of our bearded co-hosts will be hosting Beard Talk Live uncensored. No FCC in the way, so don't miss those guys. If you do miss them, you can always listen on the archive later on via the podcast at feeds.freetalklive.com. So there's bad news in Germany. We've talked about the energy situation there. It's pretty ugly. Their sanctions against Russia have resulted basically in them going to have a really cold winter, and power prices have been going up like crazy. Well, one of the downsides of dramatically increasing power rates is it gets really expensive to run a factory.
Oh, yeah.
And there's a certain company, which maybe you've heard of, BASF. And I've seen it on trucks.
Definitely heard of them.
They used to make cassette tapes and floppy disks.
Yeah.
I don't know if they make anything that's still used. I assume they do.
They are the largest, or one of the largest, chemical manufacturers on the planet. They're a pillar of German industry. So, you want to talk about, I don't know, there's a ton of chemicals these guys make, fertilizers and things like that, right? They announced at the end of October that they will be permanently downsizing its operations in Europe to escape high energy costs. BASF, they're a huge energy consumer whose main site in Europe uses as much gas as the country of Switzerland. Pharmaceutical companies and manufacturers are also voracious users that are tempted perhaps to seek cheaper energy elsewhere. Indeed, some 9% of companies in Germany's famed small and medium-sized industrial sector are seriously considering moving their production abroad, according to a survey commissioned by the Foundation for Family Business in Germany and Europe, and that's up from 6% of businesses just 6 months ago, so a 50% increase.
They don't have a choice, all right?
Yeah.
When you the problem with Germany is they've said that basically we're going to shut down our industry and we're going to send all of this all the what is it? I don't know if it's oil or whatever, however they're heating it, right? All the electricity, all the oil, they're going to send it to the homes, right? Well, if you do that, your industry goes out of, you lose your industry,
have no jobs.
right? It's going to be worse in Germany than it is in Ukraine.
Business owners like Per Kadak, a fifth-generation butcher shop owner who employs 100 people in eastern Germany and whose business dates back to before the Franco-Prussian War, he said that they don't have the firepower financially to uproot. They may just have to shut down. Under new gas contracts effective starting next year, Kadak said he would have to pay 8 times his current gas bill. 8 times. Imagine your power bill going up 8x. From one month to the next.
I mean,
from December to January.
You have to ask yourself this question. Would you rather survive and be cold and have food to eat, or die but be warm because there's no food to eat?
Because without business, there's no production.
Without production, there's nothing to consume. Doesn't matter how many little paper dollars you have unless you want to eat them.
It's looking pretty ugly out there on the near-term horizon in Germany. I'll post this full story if you want to dig into it. You can on our social media site. Just follow the FTL account there. It's social.freetalklive.com. Unfortunately, one of the things they took out of Mastodon was where we could have people automatically follow the hosts. Now you got to do it on your own. So follow FTL at social.freetalklive.com, and we'll see you tomorrow.
Do you feel like your nation, state, or community no longer holds your values? Have you dreamt of a place where people agree that liberty is important and are free to pursue their projects so long as they respect the property of others? There are many people just like you that are discovering freeprivatecities.com. Their social media links are at the upper right of the page at freeprivatecities.com. All skill levels will be needed when the first of the Free Private Cities opens. It's sooner than you think. Stop arguing and build. freeprivatecities.com.
Looking for a great real estate investment? Consider New Hampshire, which is ground zero for the Liberty Movement. Your first call should be to Mark Worden from Porcupine Real Estate. He's more than just a real estate agent. He's your New Hampshire concierge. Where are the best places to live? Do you want farm, city, the burbs, or forest? Do you want a duplex or multifamily building so that renters pay your mortgage? There are homes in all price ranges in New Hampshire, and Mark can help with financing too. Invest in liberty and property. Mark Worden can help.
PorcupineRealEstate.com